Good morning. Could you please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks. This being a special day in Calaveras County, I'd like to break protocols for a moment and take a moment of personal privilege to introduce our new CAO, Robert Lawton, or Bob, I believe he's called. We're thrilled to have him among us. He comes with great background, history of excellent public service in Albany, New York, and Wisconsin, and most recently comes to us from Solano County, where he received rave reviews from all who worked with him. We're so happy to have you here today. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank the members of the board for this opportunity to work with you and serve the people of Calaveras County. I'd like to thank everybody who showed up. I'm going to pretend that you're here for me and not for the coffee and donuts and any other pressing business on the agenda. It's been a pleasure to meet everybody even today, folks who work in the departments. I look forward to working with everybody here, both in this room and the people of the county. So once again, thanks very much, and I'm looking forward to a great future here for all of you.
Thank you. We have announcements regarding the results of closed sessions held on January 15th, 2008. Closed session was held pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, Public Employment, County Council, resulting in no action taken. Closed session was held pursuant to Government Code, actually this note says co-section, but I'm pretty sure it's code, 54956.9B1, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, 2 cases, resulting in as follows. 1 case, closed session canceled. 1 case, no action taken. The closed session was held pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, conference with labor negotiator. County representatives, CAO, and assistant CAO, Director of Human Resources and Risk Management. SEIU regarding miscellaneous employees, resulting in no action taken. A closed session was held pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, personnel matter, conference with labor negotiator, assistant CAO, Director of Human Resources and Risk Management, regarding sheriff management negotiations, human resource director, resulting in no action taken. A closed session was held, anticipated litigation, conference with legal counsel, significant exposure to litigation, 1 case, threatened litigation under Government Code Section 54956.9B1 and 54956.9B3C and D, resulting in nothing reportable. There is an addendum to today's agenda, item 18A, closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9B1, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, 2 cases, county council. I hope Mr. Lawton does not flee for his life after that report, but hang with us, buddy. We'll fix this all. We also, as I understand it, and maybe staff can advise me, but I got an email suggesting that item 14 on today's agenda was being put over to the February 5th meeting. Is that correct?
It's my understanding you have a request from the representative of the property owner that would like to have it put over. Whether or not you do it or not is up to you.
All right. And should that be determined up front or at the point that item comes up on agenda?
I suspect you're going to have members of the public here who may want to speak on that. I'd wait till you get to that point.
All right. We'll do that. Let me first survey. Are there people here on item 14 that will wish to speak at that time? All right, well, we'll see whether any come in between now and then.
I think you might ask the intent of the board if the intent is to move it out.
All right, what's the board's pleasure on this subject?
Move it out.
Move it out.
I'm in agreement.
What do we pull?
This is
Item
the
14.
Trinitas contract for the EIR.
Well, my own feeling is we should do it when it's placed on the agenda. If there's public comment, that I think we should take public comment and then decide whether to continue it or not.
Yeah, I think that's what we're doing.
Is that-
He's just kind of getting the feeling of the board right now, but
Well,
if somebody shows up, boy.
I don't think it's appropriate to continue it at this point. If people have come some distance,
He
will I
just
comment?
asked the public if anyone would like to comment, Tom. It's just to poll the board to see if the intent will be to move it out. That's all. We're not voting.
Well,
to move it
I
out.
guess I would reserve my comments until we have the public comment.
all right, at this point, I will leave it on the agenda. When we come to it, we'll ask whether there are comments and certainly encourage that. If there are none, we will move it to the 5th. If there are some, we will take those into account now and still consider it on the 5th as well. We now move to the consent agenda. These are items expected to be routine and non-controversial. They'll be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Is there any member of the public, board, or staff that wishes to remove one or a number of these from the consent agenda?
Item 4.
Item 4.
I'd like to pull item 10.
Item 10. Any others? All right, is there a motion on the balance?
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Item number 4, Rita.
I pulled item 4 because it is a fee increase, and I don't think we should do those on consent. And so I have asked the clerk recorder to come and answer any questions or open to public. And there was one other item on 2 reviews to verify that the funds are to be used only for the purpose of Social Security number education. And I didn't know, is that yearly or between 09 and 17? Karen answered me, but I thought she might like to do it for the public too.
Actually, the fee in the resolution, the way the resolution is stated, it simply says that the reviews are to be done pursuant to Government Code 27361D4, and basically what that section says is that the board shall require the first review be completed not before June 1st, 2012, or after December 31st, 2013, and that the second review be completed not before June 1st, 2017, or after December 31st, 2017. So it pretty much is just the 2 reviews during the period of the program.
Okay, thank you on that, Karen.
Are there any questions from the board? From the public or staff? Do I hear a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Agenda item 4 is approved. Moving to item 10.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, the reason that I pulled this is there's a $78,946 expenditure here for assessing the condition of our bridges. The 2 bridges on Cosgrove Creek, I would submit to you that aside from just a cursory glance at those things, it's my understanding that they're going to be removed and replaced, or proposed to be removed and replaced in the Cosgrove Creek improvement plans, where the causeway will be raised up and those bridges replaced. So Public Works Mr. Miller, I would really appreciate you talking to Stantec and making sure that they understand that those bridges, for all intents and purposes, are going to be erased. So they will have their pro rata share of $33,588 and also $13,472 for developing a maintenance plan. And I think that there's very little value in spending a lot of time evaluating a bridge that we all know is going to be gone.
We'll review that with Stantec, and we'll get back to you if there's something that we'll do other than remove them or defer them until I have more information about
Okay.
the timeline on that.
Yeah, in developing that, they have a spreadsheet where they show these various bridges that they're going to examine and review, and I would submit that if we had told them in advance or made it clear to them that those bridges are slated to be removed, that this might be a lower figure, I would expect to have you come back with some sort of a reduction in this contract or have it apply to our account. I know we do a lot of work with
We
them.
will look into it. We won't do anything until we talk with them, and then we'll bring information back to you.
Okay. With that, I'm prepared to move this item for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. We'll now move to public comments. This is for comments on things not on the agenda, 5 minutes per person, 15 minutes per topic. Is there any member of the public who wishes to address the board?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and council members. My name is Feliciano Giron, and I'm the president of the Calaveras Business Council. We're a newly formed organization within the community that is at present coming together to bring governmental and private sector businesses and organizations to try to address some of the economic development of the community and also to assist with the community development and governmental needs that may be brought forward and possibly items that we may be able to assist with from the private sector and governmental sides coming together to work in unison. We have been attempting to put together several of our key community initiatives and key programs. One of our first initiatives that we supported as a business council was the county's new jail program that was put into place. Attached, we will be handing out a packet of the business council membership, as well as some of our introductions to our objectives, public policy, and economic development initiative action plans. Present today are several members of our constituency that are part of our council. We have Ron Ashwaden from Pacific State Bank in Angels Camp, and we have David Bauman from Northwestern Mutual in Murphys. We have Ann Forrest from ABF Enterprises in Angels Camp. We have Steve Hayward from State Farm Insurance in Angels Camp. Nick Hodgson from Bank of Rio Vista in Valley Springs, Jim Conklin, who is our Business Council Executive Director, Mr. Dal Smith, who is Greenhorn Creek representative in Angels Camp, and Alan Sender, who is a representative of Sender's Market in Mountain Ranch. The purpose of our council is to work in unison with governmental agencies and with others that are willing to come together to help in moving the county forward economically. And with that, I will turn the microphone over to my counterpart, Mr. Conklin, and he will go forward with some statistics.
Before Mr. Conklin speaks, could you help our board clerk out by signing your name? I believe the spelling may be a challenge without
Yes, sir.
that.
No problem.
Feliciano, I think that other people would like to know the other hat that you wear in this county.
The other hat that I wear is as the president and CEO of Mark Twain St. Joseph's Hospitals. So a very exciting time for the community and for the hospital, and a lot of great things that we're doing and trying to take a leadership role within the community and to be a cornerstone for Calaveras County as a community-based hospital. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are refreshing words to hear.
Good morning, Supervisors. Again, my name is Jim Conklin. I'm the Executive Director of the Calaveras County Business Council. Over the past couple months, I know I've interviewed all 5 of you relative to what the key issues are facing Calaveras County, and I was very impressed with the knowledge and the expertise you bring to the table because, as you know, there are certainly a number of challenges facing Calaveras County. Primarily the issue of revenues. I'm sure you heard on the news this morning the Fed discounted another 3/4 of a point. I don't think anybody really knows where the economy is going to be going, but from a statistical standpoint, we know that there's a lack of diversity in this county. We know you face a number of challenges relative to the revenue issue. I read in this morning's Enterprise, county sees $1.3 million spending drop. Sales tax revenue fell about 9% less than 2006-07 and about 6% less than 05-06. So we've got challenges in front of us. There's a retail leakage issue here where people leave this county to go to Stanislaus, Tuolumne, Amador, et cetera, and shop, and obviously spend their money in other places. The challenge I think we all face is how do we pay for the service levels, the public sector service levels, sheriffs, library, roads, a variety of other issues. And the Business Council has really come together to work with you to address and resolve those issues. So our whole posture is we know we need to help you address the issues that you face. And again, that's the reason behind the Business Council in its existence. So we're here to help. And I'll turn it back over to Feliciano.
Once again, we wanted to come forth and make the council aware of our existence as an organization. Also extend our assistance to you in any activities or initiatives that you may have, and also come forth and present to you our membership and also talk to you about any opportunities that you may find within the reading packets that were presented to you that may be of interest to each and every one of you. And please feel free to call either myself or Mr. Conklin. All of the contact information for our membership is within that packet, and any of our members are willing to sit down and talk with each and every one of you to assist in any type of programs that might be coming forth. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, board members.
Is there another member of the public who wishes to address the board?
Well, Brian Santos, San Andreas. Well, I was here 3 years ago fighting regarding the ambulance situation, the paramedic services in this county. Now I hear that they're going to close another ambulance in this county. You guys have got to stop this. I told you this was going to happen 3 years ago when we were fighting for the RFP and the local ambulance companies that were here. I'm just confused to why you guys are allowing this to happen. Why you're not stopping this. I'm really curious. You're talking about citizens and lives that are being jeopardized in this county. When they first started the RFP, I told you guys, stood right here and told you they were going to be short ambulances. They were 24 hours right off the bat. Then they dropped it to 48. Now you're going to have a total of 96 paramedic hours lost by cutting them a Colonial car. This service is not better than what we had before. I don't care what anybody here thinks. It's not better. It's worse. You guys have got to stop this and not allow them to cut any more cars in this county. Or this county is going to be paying fire departments around here to become paramedic services. You're going to have to do it. People are going to die if you don't stop it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Mary Mutz, Agricultural Commissioner. Good morning, Chair Walensky, members of the board, and welcome, Mr. Lawton. I would like to take a moment to update you on some recent activities in the Department of Agriculture. Last week, an auditor from the California Department of Food and Agriculture was in the department, and she was auditing our records regarding the Pierce's disease, glassy wing sharpshooter program, reviewing our billings, our procedures, all of our record keeping. And to summarize, her report will state that there are no reportable errors. In other words, what she told me it's appropriate to say is that we passed with flying colors. And I just wanted to leave you with a good note this morning, letting you know that there is something positive. Thank you for your time.
Well, we vanquished the grasshoppers anyway, huh?
Which I'm hoping is enough to keep Mr. Lawton around for at least a while. Other comments? At this point, I'd like to adjourn the Board of Supervisors meeting and commence with a meeting of the In-Home Supportive Services Public Authority. The board is constituted as that, in that wearing the other hat. So the Public Authority meeting will now begin. Steve,
is that part of the medical marijuana argument, or no, it's not? Can we?
We'll have further comment on that later in the meeting, but it's not as it appears. We'll start with public comments regarding the MOU. Any comments from the general public or staff?
Good morning. Francine Osborne, Administrative Office. The item before you, we're pleased to announce we have a new contract with the in-home supportive service workers. If you remember, we had our first MOU 2 years ago, and the highlights of this agreement basically center around wages, increase in help to the number of providers, and increase in training. So we're happy to have a new agreement. It went relatively smooth. As you know, we get federal and state participation. So the cost is in your board packet, split out over the 3+ year agreement.
Thank you, Francine. I believe that was comment under item number 3. We have item number 1 here, which is any public comments regarding the public authority or issues before it that are not on the agenda. Are there any of those? There being none, I'd like to move to item number 2, minutes of the IHSS meeting held on February 6th and May 22nd, 2007. Requires board action to approve. Is there
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. And now for the item that has been described by Francine.
I'll move the resolution, Mr. Chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. The meeting of the IHSS Public Authority is hereby adjourned, and we recommence our meeting with the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you.
We have a 2-minute recess, actually, because the public hearing begins at 9:30. Hearing and possible board action regarding the following: 2005-190 zoning amendment, amended subdivision tract map, and land development permit for Floyd and Marilyn Norian and Mark Pringle Company, LLC, North Vista Plaza. I won't go into the details of what's being requested. I'd like to turn it over to staff to introduce the topic. I understand the proponent has a multimedia presentation which will last approximately 15 to 20 minutes. We will follow that by board questions and public comment, bring it back to the board for review and action if desired.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Sullivan.
Excuse me. Mr. Chairman, you have the county's staff report on this matter, and the developer is going to give you a broader presentation, so I'll not waste time doing that generally. There are a number of truly minor corrections and so on that are going to be requested in the documents of approval as opposed to the staff reports themselves. As an example, on the resolution actually approving the vesting map, I had a couple of computer glitches. They were my fault. We had like the wrong project number. We're correcting that, the project description. We have, in fact, we are now at 167 lots rather than the 169 that were originally petitioned because of changes to the project that have been made by the applicant. Relative to the findings, we have a couple of minor changes that help clarify that the applicant, if you look behind Supervisor Tryon, there is language in the findings that clarify the area in green was added as an additional detention basin in order to assure that there was far in excess of needed capacity for detention under any scenario. And we are, again, on page 18 of our findings, we're just clarifying that language a little bit so it's clear what was done and why.
There being a number of green
Excuse me.
things on the map, could you please give us a hint as to which you're talking about?
The light green portion, that's the large area. That is correct. That's the detention basin that was added. And substantially that is it. The rest of them are very minor. They're corrections only. The Planning Commission has reviewed this project and has recommended approval. You have that before you in the packet. Staff has reviewed the project and based on the Planning Commission's recommendations, we have prepared the findings that we have placed in draft form before you, and we are recommending, subject to the input from the audience, that you consider this project favorably and approve the project as petitioned.
Any other staff comments before we hear from the proponent?
Not at this time.
Take it away. Could you please introduce yourself first?
Yes. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Mark Pringle. My address is 90 El Camino Real, Burlingame. I'm going to take you through a brief slideshow. It should last about 20 minutes or so, but I think it'll be important to point out the major issues that everybody should be aware of regarding this project. I've been building houses for about 20 years, I guess a little over 20 years now, mostly in the Bay Area, but since then have been slowly expanding eastward. Finished a project recently in Brentwood, and now we're here in Valley Springs.
There you go. Okay, we'll turn the lights out. Some of them.
There you go.
It's fine.
That's good.
So this is an aerial photo of the area in general. The little red circle shows where the site is. To the left of that is Rancho Calaveras. To the right, in the green, you can see La Contenta. This is a close-up aerial photo. The site is bounded with the red line. Our surrounding uses, we have a Head Start school to the southeast, commercial office and dentist's office to the south, residential on Berkesee to the west, rural residential on the west and north sides. You can see the golf driving range there in light green on the upper right. La Contenta is on the far right. I wanted to point out Berkesee is that white line that comes up from the bottom and makes a little curve to the right and connects in with our site. Generally, what we're proposing and what we're showing you today is a project with 156 lots. We have two different neighborhood types. Total site area is 33.5 acres. It is currently zoned R3, R3 mobile home park, and commercial. Overall, the lot size is 7,082 square feet. This is an infill location. All impacts of this project have been mitigated. We have an agreement with CCWD to provide water and sewer service. And I think it's important to point out that this is an infill project. I imagine that the projects that you see here often are on the outskirts of civilization, perhaps, and out in more forested or more open space areas. This project is different than that in that it is surrounded by commercial and residential uses. I'd like to point out, and I think it's worth noting, what is allowed under the current zoning. Under R3 PD, 12 units per acre, we are allowed to put in 252 units. We're also allowed to put in 75 mobile home units. That would allow us 327 units on this site. Under the current ordinance, there is no tree preservation required. no open space required, no affordable housing required, and there's no approval process required to go through that to put high-density residential on the site. Floyd Norried is the owner of this property. He's here today. He received approval for commercial on the proposed site. He then requested a change of zoning to R3. And it was not designated R3 by the county, is not in the general plan as R3, and is also not listed in the county's housing element as part of the R3 inventory. I think it's important to note that because that's an issue that's been floating around quite a bit. It was Floyd's idea to make it R3 in the first place, and now it's our request, along with Floyd's request, that this zoning change to R1, and I think that that's a more appropriate use for this site. What we are proposing is 156 units. 108 units are standard lots. I call standard lots about 7,000 square foot lots, and 48 cluster lots. We are, under current zoning, allowed to do 7,000 square foot lots, but in our preliminary discussions with the planning department, they recommended that we apply for R1. And the reason for that is that it provides us more flexibility. It provides us the flexibility to do smaller lots than 7,000 square feet, which we feel is important to do in this location. So if we met current zoning, we would have a site with 7,000 square foot lots. It would pretty much look the same, but it would not have any of the smaller lots that we think are valuable. I'm building 38 houses next door to this site. Many of you may have seen it. We've completed the grading on the site work. As you go up Highway 26, you may have seen that. Our site work is done, and we're waiting for things to pick up a little bit in the housing market, and we'll be right back at it again. So I've been involved in the area for about 2 years now. I enjoy it very much, as a matter of fact. And so as I was involved in that first 38 units, Floyd and I discussed what was going on with the rest of his property. We discussed its high-density zoning and felt that it was inappropriate for high density. So we went to the planning department to discuss that with them. So we put in 2 areas of cluster housing, and you can see those circled in red. So when we started our discussions with the planning staff, it was suggested by the staff that we provide some lower cost housing. And we have done that in those 2 areas. But we're providing lower cost housing by design, not by mandate, not by restriction. But we have done some at the staff's request, and that is to provide 5 low-income housing units that will be located in that cluster housing area. And those units will sell for an average of $200,000 each. In this plan, we have a progression of unit types. In the lower right is existing commercial, then we transition to high-density detached, then we transition in the upper left to our standard lots, and then those are surrounded by rural residential, which are 10-acre lots. So I think logically it's a logical progression. We have 48 cluster lots. Minimum lot size is 47 feet by 60. The lot sizes range from 2,800 square feet to 7,700 square feet and average about 3,600 square feet. The houses on those cluster lots will be from 982 square feet to a little over 2,000. We provide 56 guest parking spaces. The driveways that serve those clusters of 4 or 6 houses have no parking allowed in them and no sidewalks. So we have accommodated for that by having 56 guest parking spaces on the street. And this plan, this cluster layout has been approved both by the Public Works Department and by the Fire Department. This is a detail of that cluster. You can see the driveways in white. The houses are in beige. Each house has a 2-car garage and a tiny backyard or side yard of some kind. This is how a cluster is laid out. You can see 2 car garages that face that. There are no one-story houses shown on this, but our 982 square foot house is a one-story. Let's move on to the issues that have been of general importance on this project. We'll talk about open space briefly, storm drainage, grading, tree preservation, biology, and a traffic signal. My philosophy, just to give you a little bit of information, is not to provide the planning staff with minimal information and piecemeal information. I don't think it makes any sense, and that's not the way I like to do things. So when we started this thing, we amassed all the information that we thought was necessary and provided to the planning staff all in the beginning. We've analyzed every aspect of this project. This is a plan that's also on the wall. We went to the Planning Commission in December 2006 and again in June of this year. And during that 6 months, we met with the concerned groups concerned about this project 3 times. We met with myvalleysprings.com, CSERC, Tom Infusino was also there, and I think the meetings were productive. We listened to the concerns of the groups that were there, and then we went back to the drawing board to address those concerns. So during this process of those discussions, we had already analyzed this project, I think, in a very detailed way. But we went back, we took the whole thing apart, and looked at every one of those aspects that were of concern, made sure that we were doing it as best we could, and then we put the project back together again. I think that they should be satisfied with this project. They didn't get all of the things that they wanted, and neither did I. But that's the nature of these discussions. I think we tried really hard to make this project the best that we could. Let's talk about open space. We have 4.3 acres of on-site open space, which is 13% of the site. We also have off-site open space, and I think it's worth noting when Floyd originally got his 75-acre project, which includes this site and his commercial approved, he set aside 7.2 acres as open space. And I think that we should get some credit for that as well. How much, I don't know. But if you look at that plus the open space that we're providing on this particular site, that totals 15% of the site. And that contains the most valuable areas biologically, which is oak woodland, the creek area, and some large trees. One area that we are setting aside as open space is the upper left-hand corner, which is a detention basin area, and also the creek corridor. We are relocating part of that creek, and we're doing that with Corps of Engineers oversight. This is a plan from our landscape architect showing what the creek corridor will look like when it's done. We're going to landscape it quite a bit. It's currently a dry creek channel. It's about 1 foot deep and about 1.5 foot wide. But it's important to save, and so we're going to do that. And so we'll enhance that creek corridor by planting native trees and shrubs. And I think from a biological point of view, the creek corridor will be in a condition that is better than its current state. The second area of open space is for the oak woodland. I think that oak woodland area biologically is the most valuable area on the site, even though it really hasn't gotten much attention because it doesn't have any large trees. In addition, in the upper right is a community park that will be in the center of the project, and we'll have a walking path and some benches and children's tot lot. Here. That's a landscape architect rendering of it. We'll have benches and tables under the tree canopy, and that park will be about 1/2 acre. Other open space that I've already mentioned is this 7.2 acres. And you can see that this is a plan of Floyd's overall 75 acres. You can see that light green area of 7 acres in the middle of the project. Let's talk about storm drainage for a minute. Our plan meets the upcoming storm drainage standards. I know that the county is working on those new standards, and this project will meet those. We have water that flows both to Cosgrove and Indian Creek. We will have no additional peak flows from anywhere on the site, and we have 3 detention basins that will do that. This shows the drainage basins. The Cosgrove Creek drainage area is on the right of the site, and the Indian Creek drainage area is on the left. We made some storm drainage modifications as a result of our meetings with concerned groups. One of those was to move the detention basin. We moved a detention basin that was actually in the lower right corner up to the upper left corner, and I think it was a great idea, and we enlarged it as well. We also have a detention basin that will catch water that flows into the Oak Woodland area, and you can see it. It's a small basin next to Lot 7. And we have one off-site detention basin in the open space area. We're expanding an existing wetland area and enhancing it to accommodate an additional flow of stormwater and also to hold water for a longer time during the year. And I think that's valuable to keep water in a wetland area as long as we possibly can. We've worked closely with our biologists to design the basin and be sensitive to the existing habitat. These are some notes from our biologist showing where the wetland was, and I just point that out because that's the way we design these things, is instead of designing it and going to the biologist and say, this works, right? We go to the biologist and say, what should we do based upon what you found? Grading was an issue that was discussed a few times in our meetings. Our grading follows the contours of the site, and our cut and fill does balance on the site. These are some sections a little bit hard to see, but the orange and red show where there are areas of cut and fill. The upper section is a section through the area that goes through the Oak Woodland and the creek from east to west, and the lower section is a section that goes through the project from north to south. There's not a lot of topographical change over the site. This is a close-up of that upper section, and I point this out because this is the one with the most topographical difference from one end to the other. And our maximum cut or fill on the site is about 10 feet. Trees are always an emotional issue. We are preserving 6 of 10 of trees 30 inches and larger. Of the 129 trees that are 6 inches and above on the site, we are preserving 77. And in addition to that, we are planting 431 more trees. We worked very closely with Eric, our civil engineer, and our arborist, Harry Bloom, and we analyzed each tree on that site and which ones we could save and which ones we could not. And we have, so we're not guessing as to which trees we're going to save. We know which ones we can save. This is an aerial photo of the site. You can see there's not a lot of trees that we're dealing with on this site, but I think it's still important for us to save some of the trees because there are some beautiful trees and there are some great areas of trees, and we have done that. This is a picture from My Valley Springs. This is tree number 101. It's about a 41-inch diameter tree. We have now located it on its own lot on the west side of the project. This My Valley Springs trespasser is proudly standing next to the tree. And here is another My Valley Springs person standing in front of one of our trees. This is tree number 1. And it will be preserved in the front yard of Lot 99. The Oak Woodland area is on the left in that green circle, and it was designated Oak Woodland by our registered forester in his report. So that Oak Woodland area in our open space there is the lower group of trees. And we've expanded that because there were a couple of nice trees above it. So we are saving all of the oak woodland and some of the surrounding area. Biology, we have studied for the red-legged frog, tiger salamander, and elderberry beetle. Our survey of the site is complete. There is no salamander, frog, or beetle habitat on the site. We've gone as far as we can with our applications. They have been reviewed, and there are no issues by these agencies. This is a plan from our study showing all occurrences for frogs and salamanders within a 5-mile radius of our site, which is a pretty long distance. It encompasses all of Hogan Reservoir. There were 6 tiger salamander occurrences within 5 miles, and you can see those in green. And there was one red-legged frog occurrence within 5 miles. There are none within a mile radius of this site. We've worked closely with the Army Corps of Engineers, Department of Fish and Game, Regional Water Quality Control Board, and Department of U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Their response has been that they concur with our findings. There is no wetland, no endangered species, or habitat on the site. We also did a wetland survey. There is some seasonal wetland, but no wetland under Corps of Engineers jurisdiction. And finally, our traffic signal. I think everybody knows that we need a traffic signal at the intersection of Vista del Lago and Highway 26. But we needed to find out how bad it was. And so we did a traffic study. We have the data. We know what to do to solve the problem. It can be solved by putting a traffic signal there. It's needed now. Our study is complete. And that study also included the traffic from all future projects that we could consider that had been applied for with the county. And the signal level of service now, I think, is F. And after the signal installed, it will be B or better. So, to summarize, we are proposing 153 fewer units than the current zoning allows. That's important, I believe, because it provides less impacts on traffic, less impacts on utilities, less contribution to cumulative impacts, which I know is a very sensitive subject for many people in the county. The majority of the trees are preserved on the site. There are no endangered species or wetland. We have water and sewer capacity. Our traffic signal will be installed to solve that issue at the intersection. Storm drainage is addressed. I think that this proposed development is the right thing for this site. I think it's very appropriate for the location, as I've described. Because we have a variety of housing types, we're also providing affordable housing by design, mostly, and we are also providing 5 homes that are restricted to an average of $200,000 each. We received Planning Commission approval in December. I'm excited about this project. I've spent a lot of time with this project, and I think that it is a beautiful addition to this community. And I hope that you think so as well. So I'm here today to request your approval. We have some consultants here that can answer questions for you. We have John Torrey, who prepared the initial study. John Zentner, our biologist, can answer all questions relating to frogs and trees and stuff like that. John Truxar, our land use attorney, is here and can help with providing information, if necessary, on zoning and land use. And Eric, our civil engineer, is here to answer questions about grading, storm drainage, and myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further additions by staff at this time?
No.
Any questions from the board before we move to public input?
I just have one clarification. I thought I heard Mr. Pringle say that part of that was Zone C1 on one of his first 2, 3, 4 slides. I didn't see that. Staff doesn't report. nor did the initial study say that part of the parcel for rezoning is C1. Maybe, did I misunderstand him, or did I miss it?
We're not listing any as commercial. I think you said it was prior to zone commercial?
Could you just go there so I can see, because you showed what the current zoning was at the very beginning.
One of the first slides. One of the
first few slides. Because he talked about what the zoning is.
Mr. Chairman, I think the reference was it went from commercial to the R3.
Well,
so
that was the before it moved to the...
It was 3.4 acres. It's right there. The current zoning, R3 PD, R3 mobile home, and C2. That's what he said exists. That's not what was in the staff report.
That's not what we're showing in the staff report, so I'll have to do some digging.
All right, I would ask that before this is concluded that we verify existing zoning if
Not that
can be
that
reconciled.
changes the bottom line, but that wasn't...
I think that the cluster area on the west side, the south side, is
Are you? Let me see on this map for a moment, sir. Are you talking about this area here?
Yeah. I verified.
We can get back to it, but the resolution...
Mr. Chairman, Stephanie Moreno, Director of Community Development. Whether or not there's a typo in the staff report, the issue of the C2 zoning does not impact the project as it's been requested, nor does it impact the staff recommendation relative to the project. I'd like, if we could verify it on our break. I'm sure we'll need one today, and we'll come back with you with the correct information.
Thank you.
Because it's in the staff report, it's in the resolution, the ordinance.
Yes.
The initial study does not address C2.
Thank you.
All right. A mystery which will be solved shortly. At this point, I would like to open the hearing to comment from public. Is there anybody who wishes? Actually, we have traditionally sworn people in for this, and I would ask County Council whether that is by habit or statutory requirement.
I think it's probably board required.
Let me, before we commence with swearing anybody in, see whether the board wishes to continue that practice. Any thoughts on the matter?
Absolutely.
Not.
Yes.
I'm disinclined, but that's a 3-2. So would those people who wish to speak on this topic please rise and...
So if you're not sworn in, you can lie.
and be sworn in. Carol?
Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Would that apply retroactively to the previous presenter? I guess for any future comments. All right. Who would like to speak first? And could you state your name for the record and sign in, please?
Good morning. Colleen Platt with MyValleySprings.com. And by the way, we were not the trespassers in those pictures. Those photos were given to us by trespassers. Actually, I think they had permission, but I couldn't swear to MyValleySprings.com is a nonprofit group of concerned citizens who promote responsible and planned growth and development with full public participation in the process. We hope the Board of Supervisors understands our mission and goals. Our comments are intended to help and add to the planning process in Calaveras County in order to keep it a wonderful place to live. We have always supported a good smart growth development project on the North Vista Plaza site. In Valley Springs, as long as it mitigates negative impacts and is consistent with goals and policies of the County General Plan and the housing element. This 34-acre property lies within the existing La Contenta Community Center area, which allows for development. An application to rezone the property from unclassified to multiple uses, including commercial and R3, was previously approved by the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors in 1999. The owner now wishes to rezone this entire portion of the property to a single-family subdivision, and we oppose this particular downzoning, as we feel it is contrary to the goals of our housing element. And we do feel that this site is quite appropriate for higher density, which is the purpose of the R3 zoning. Excuse me. The property, the reasons we feel this is an appropriate site is the property is close to Highway 26 and the La Contenta bus stop. Access is good. Public water and sewer are available. It is next to existing and future extensive commercial and retail development, shopping and restaurants, medical and dental care, and as mentioned before, a Head Start school readiness facility. In other words, this is a great site for higher density, multifamily, mixed-use, affordable housing. It's a large site. It could be a lot of good things on there. This is in accordance with Board of Supervisor current policies for development. The existing zoning is R3, which allows high density, multifamily, senior complexes, affordable workforce housing, a wide range of housing choices, including single-family homes, condominiums, senior communities, apartments, duplexes, townhomes. A lot of uses could be on this property. And this could be a model smart growth development if designed well with encourage and support by the Planning Department and the supervisors. We've been following this application over 2 years, since December 2005, and have made many suggestions and comments along the way to try to help make this a better project. We met with the developer and drew up an alternative site plan showing possibilities for even higher density uses, including condos and apartments. So we are not against increasing the density of the project. We feel this would be an appropriate use of the project. We met with the developer, and we did have some productive meetings. Some of our suggestions were listened to. Some improvements have been made. Instead of only 2 heritage oaks to be saved out of 33, now 13 heritage oaks will be saved. The small oak woodland that was shown on the map will be preserved, and that is a real good thing. As we requested, an oak inventory was completed, and building envelopes have been established to protect the remaining oaks. There is more open space now than there was in the initial project, partly due to the increased need for drainage basins to accommodate water and flooding runoff. As we pointed out last spring, the initial drainage report was inadequate. And it was redone, and the drainage basins were basically doubled in size. But our biggest disappointment in all of the discussions has been with our efforts to keep at least some portion of the project in the R3 zoning for the purpose of both affordable workforce housing and other multifamily housing options, such as senior retirement communities, condominiums, apartments, duplexes, townhomes. Unfortunately, the developer was unwilling to consider any other housing types, and the North Vista Plaza project continues to request downzoning of the entire site from R3 to R1 for a single-family home subdivision. This zoning change deliberately precludes any possibility of building multifamily on these 34 acres in the future. And we have a lot of people that want not just workforce housing, but we have seniors that would like to downsize, maybe move to a condominium complex in the oak trees, some sort of other use would be appropriate. This downzoning creates a tremendous loss of housing options, and it is the opposite of a goal of the housing element, which is to increase maximum permitted density in R3 zoned areas. The 5 affordable units offered do not make up for the potential loss of hundreds of affordable multifamily units. From the first page of the Calaveras County housing element, the requirements of government code sections, and I won't read you the numbers, requires local jurisdictions to prepare and implement a plan for providing affordable housing that identifies and analyzes existing and projected housing needs and inventories adequate sites for housing, including vacant sites. The housing element goal is to, quote, provide a wide variety of housing, accessible and affordable to all county residents. The housing element anticipates that 3,289 residential units will be necessary to fill the county's housing need from 2001 to 2009, but by 2004, the moderate and above moderate income housing goals had already been met. The goal of 1,286 units for lower and very low income is still a long way off, and the county has made very little progress to fulfill this obligation. The housing element also states that there are no locations in the county in which very low income and low income families can afford to purchase a single family residence. So the county has created various goals and programs to provide affordable housing units and has inventoried R3 sites zoned for high density multifamily housing. The housing element lists 11 R3 multifamily housing parcels for a total of 13 acres in the Greater Valley Springs area, not including the North Vista Plaza parcel. And on the map I'm handing out to you, I've got the R3 sites marked in sort of a reddish pink color, and the North Vista Plaza parcel is the largest parcel noted on the map.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. It would be helpful if staff could get copies of the documents that are being passed
I
out.
thought I had one extra for staff. Is there not?
Yes, we'll make sure you get 2 immediately.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Marita. Okay, let's take just a moment for people to...
Sure. Anyway, I've marked the R3 zoned parcels and in color on the map just to make it easier to view. I also noted some of R2 parcels. There's just a very few on the left, but there's no sewer or water, and a house is built on one of them, and one of them's not buildable either, so those don't play into this too much. Anyway, the 11 R3 zone parcels shown plus the North Vista Plaza parcel is not in the housing element, as they said, but it is zoned R3, so I've shown it on the map. 10 of the 11 parcels listed in the housing element are described as being likely to serve moderate or above moderate income households. In fact, 9 of those parcels are located next to the golf course, and 3 already have single-family homes built on them. So that leaves only 1 listed housing element listed parcel for low income to moderate income multifamily housing. And this parcel is described as 102 anticipated units, but that is the parcel right in downtown Valley Springs, the 8.5-acre parcel Charbonneau Estates, which is currently under application to be developed as 52 single-family homes. So again, here we go. We get basically 0 parcels left that are adequate and available for multifamily homes in the area if we take out North Vista Plaza. Like I say, that reduces our options for multifamily housing, senior condos, townhomes, for anything in the area if we take out North Vista Plaza. Valley Springs and Rancho Calaveras are among the highest concentrations of population in the county, And I would think that we would need more than 0 R3 parcels zoned for lower income affordable workforce housing or senior housing needs. These 4 parcels in the North Vista Plaza project, I was under the impression they were all zoned R3. I'm not sure about the commercial zoning of them. If they are all zoned R3, which is how they were listed in the staff report, they would have the theoretic potential to provide nearly 350 units of affordable multifamily housing at an allowed density of 12 units per acre. But with a single-family subdivision, you are eliminating these housing options. 156 single-family homes, and only 5 will be sold for an affordable price of $200,000, which is actually not low-income affordable. That's still up in moderate income affordable. Low-income stops at, for a family of 4, at $170,000, I believe. And we don't know what the rest of the high-density cluster housing will sell for, but it'll be, above $200,000. And as was reported in the paper last year, the larger homes could sell up to $600,000. So again, we're not addressing the needs of the workforce housing here. We did have discussions with the developer about the possibility of building condominiums or apartments. As you see on the map that I handed out, we talked where these could be located. He looked into the possibility and basically came back and said it didn't pencil out, that it didn't work for him. But we have met with developers in the area in Stockton who specialize in affordable housing. So there are developers that can build affordable housing and make it pencil out. They're called Visionary Homes in Stockton. And this is a list of projects they've done all up and down the valley. They've gone, I think, all the way down to Fresno and north, and they have quite extensive experience. We met with them. They're very professional. They manage their properties well. They pre-screen their applicants, do background checks, find the financing for the projects. They seem to be quite competent. So affordable housing can be built. It is possible. During all this research and discussion, we were disappointed to find that our zoning code has no protection for R3 zoning, and this is something I hope we can address in the general plan update. It allows a single-family subdivision to be built on an R3 parcel as a permitted use with no permit needed or anything. So we're not really sure what the purpose of having the R3 zoning in our housing element is at this point. And how is the county going to be able to provide affordable workforce housing if it continues to let the R3 zoning be converted to single-family subdivisions in the moderate and above price range? We worked for months to negotiate and find a compromise solution. By the end of the last October meeting, the developer and CDA made it clear that no multifamily would be built, but we were under the understanding that 10 affordable homes would be built, and we were willing to live with that at that point, but that agreement was withdrawn sometime after the meeting, leaving only 5 moderate affordable homes, and that just to us is not enough for 34 acres of potential R3 multifamily housing. So as this project is proposed with only 5 affordable homes and no multifamily housing on a 34-acre R3 zone site, we do not support this request for a zone change. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there another speaker? Could you please sign in, state your name for the record?
Sorry, I didn't bring a pen with me.
Apparently somebody's run off with it. It must be those trespassers or something.
My name is Glenn Diefendorfer. I'm a new resident to Valley Springs. I didn't know I was going to speak today, and when I got here, my wife said I should ask a question, and I promised to ask a truthful question. But after hearing this previous speaker, I have more than a question. I'd like to introduce some common sense into this, if that's okay. I don't understand where the huge workforce, or why the huge workforce would be moving into Valley Springs. The only construction I see going on presently is a new Taco Bell. I oppose high-density housing or keeping this in R3. I didn't come here to lend support to the project at all, but I much prefer single-family residences than high density for a lot of reasons. I don't think Valley Springs can support high-density housing. If you try to do any shopping there or get any goods or services there, you might understand why. There isn't a lot yet in Valley Springs. People come to the big city of San Andreas to do a lot of shopping. We do anyway. So I would oppose condos, apartments in that part of Valley Springs. I don't think the infrastructure can support it. I don't think there's goods and services. I don't believe police and fire services will be able to handle that type of development until we first take the logical steps of building something that would cause people to come to Valley Springs. You don't build it and they will come. Build the infrastructure first. The question that I had was whether or not Berkesee was going to be extended and connected from Vista del Lago around the corner to the existing part of Berkesee. And the reason I asked that question, I guess there's a couple reasons. One is I live on Berkesee, and the traffic there is pretty high speed and numerous right now. Adding more houses, especially high-density houses, and punching Berkesee through would increase the traffic on Berkesee, which would move, I think, some of the traffic at Vista del Lago and Highway 26 further down to where 26 and Silver Rapids connect, which is already, I think, a pretty scary intersection when you're trying to pull out in the morning or at night during the commute, when most people leave Valley Springs to go find work. So there's more traffic signals that need to be put in besides the one at Vista del Lago and 26, especially if Berkesee is pushed through. That will just move more traffic down, like I said, to other intersections. So they need to look forward, be forward-thinking as far as that goes too. So, one, I'm opposed to high density. Two, I would prefer the new proposal to go to R1 from R3. And three, the question is, what's the plan for Berkesee? Thank you.
Thank you. Would staff like to answer questions as we go or at the end of? Well, okay. You'll get your answer at the conclusion of public comment.
Hi, my name is Mark Jones, and I'm here from myvalleysprings.com, and I'm also kind of following up. I've got some information that I printed from the county housing element, and I'm going to kind of follow up what Colleen was talking about. I have some handouts for you.
Thank you, Carol.
So this paper is printed from the Calaveras housing element. The first page is dated 5/9/05. This was the last time this was updated. And basically this goes back to some of the figures that Colleen quotes. The first one is what were the quantified objectives on the first page. And if you get to the end of 2007 and you do the subtraction from the 1,286 that she talked about, we're roughly, it should be somewhere around 987 units of very low and low income housing that we had hoped would be built in this time period. And then she also talks, Colleen talked about the moderate and above moderate income level, and it basically says the goal has been met there. So that's the total amount of figures that she's given for the 3289 projected. Now the second page is, we talk in this project, and we talk about a lot of other projects about moderate and low income levels. There's a little bit of a terminology difference, and I want to kind of get that clarified a little bit today. On the second page, it's the affordable housing incomes by categories. Now, this information is from 06. So, no, I'm sorry, this information is from 06 to 07. So what's important here is to look at the income categories of very low, low, median, and moderate. You see at the top of the line there under their annual incomes, we're going to be referring back later to these figures, 29,000, 46,400, the median being 58,000, and moderate being 69,600. And then you take that down to what the actual loan payment is for a house. And then at the bottom you see the actual maximum affordable purchase price of that house. And below that it lists up through, actually this paper is 2005. It actually lists up through 2005 on the rest of that page the projects that have been completed in Calaveras County. At the bottom of this page, it's 63 units. That's what we'd accomplished up through 2005. We have had 2 grants, quite a few other grants, and that COG over in Sonora has been handling. They did just get another grant recently for $800,000. Larry Busby told me that roughly just about everybody with one of those grants qualifies for roughly $100,000 of assistance. So each time we get one of those grants, we help out about another 7 to 8 folks. And so if you take that and some of the other ones that I may not be aware of, and you project the 63 number up, say, through 2007, for the simple math, I'm going to say we've accomplished somewhere around 100 units. Now, the only thing in the county I could find as what was affordable and low income and very low income and people's in their salaries is the last 7 pages, the County of Calaveras salary grade definitions. I've taken the figures from the second page where it talks about very low at 29,000 and lower at 46,400, and I've gone down to Calaveras County salary grades. There's a total of 342 grades in the county. 69 of them, or 18.7%, are very low. 163 of them, or 47.7%, are low income. So you've got a total of your salary grades are roughly 2/3, 66.4% of the people qualify for low or very low income housing.
Including the Board of Supervisors.
I didn't see your class on here.
It's right there. Yeah.
It's on there.
It's on the first page.
He talks about providing low income here. To me, based on your housing element, low income, the purchase price on that second page is really $170,000. So when you're providing a bunch of housing for $200,000, if he's stating that, it's basically moderate income, median income, and that goal has been met. North Vista Plaza has approximately 3% workforce housing, the 5 units as it's proposed right now, which is obviously better than none. Since we should have 987 units, it'd be nice to really get the 2 figures closer together. You know, I mean, we have a pretty big gap we need to fill to try to come up anywhere close to where we hoped we would be in the 2005 housing element. The other project Colleen talked about that was zoned R3 in downtown Valley Springs, the agent for that developer has basically said that he also wants to probably sell the houses for $200,000. That was a couple of months ago at one of our last meetings. Of course, the market's changed since then. Who knows what it's going to be, but I just want to point out that that is also not low-income housing or workforce housing, whatever you want to call it. So we have a long way to go before we can get to the point where we're even attempting to provide workforce housing. And workforce housing, it's everybody that lives here. I mean, it's not, it's the people that live and work here in Calaveras County. Thanks.
Thank you.
Morning. Joyce Teckel, myvalleysprings.com. I want to address two things. We had an engineer, a licensed engineer, overlook the original partial analysis of initial study for North Vista Plaza. And there were some corrections made. Things were improved. We also had him, we hired him to overlook or review the preliminary drainage study by Rick Engineering Company dated October 11th, 2007. I'm not going to read this whole report. I'm certainly not an engineer. I don't even understand all of it. But when I looked through this, there were some sentences and phrases that raised red flags for me, so I'm going to go through them for you. Although this study has been performed to a higher standard of engineering with respect to delineating drainage boundaries, there is still a glaring error. Further down, never in my experience working in and with flood control agencies the past 37 years have I heard of such nonsense. Further down, all of the pre-project discharge rates shown are overstated by 41.9%. Further down, the engineer did not provide justification data. Further down, separate calculations for added sub-areas are not shown, and it becomes impossible to correctly review the calculations as to proper methodology for pipe sizes. Storm drain inverts and pipe sizes should be shown on the drainage maps. Currently, none are shown, and it would be difficult to compare this hydrology report with the future storm drain plan. And last, the use of times shorter than 5 minutes would result in increased discharges for existing conditions, but by how much is too difficult to say without redoing the hydrology for the engineer. It's his responsibility to do this. Now, we turned this report in the day of the Planning Commission meeting. We were informed by staff that these concerns would be addressed in the future. We just really want to be sure that those concerns are addressed and that the changes that have been made have addressed this, and if not, that they will. And I would like that responded to by Bob Selman in his summary at the end of this. We would really want that assurance that these concerns have been addressed. Now, I have another presentation that I want to read.
Bob, do you have a copy of what Joyce just read?
The drainage study.
And you have to answer it. I just want to make sure you have a copy.
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
Now, myvalleysprings.com has made many written and verbal comments about cumulative impacts of the North Vista Plaza project, especially regarding Sheriff Department staffing and traffic congestion on Highway 26. Impacts to Highway 26 corridor are not being mitigated adequately. However, today I would like to focus on law enforcement issues. Negative and cumulative impacts to law enforcement are significant and are not mitigated in project conditions. The staff report states the addition of 162 additional single-family residences would potentially result in the need for funding 38% of one deputy sheriff position, one deputy sheriff per 1,000 population, and the designation from the county was less than significant impact. Negative impacts to law enforcement staff from new subdivisions have been clearly stated in letters to planning from the Sheriff's Department. They do not approve this project without mitigation from developer funds. Planning said additional taxes will provide funding, but this is inaccurate. Taxes are not adequate mitigation. Property tax revenues go into the general fund and are not allocated to a specific project impact. The staff report also states impact to the Sheriff's Department are considered social impacts rather than physical impacts to the environment. We don't agree with this statement. CEQA looks at any physical impact to the human environment. Crime has many physical impacts on the human environment. Crimes of vandalism like graffiti, property damage, and arson damage property and make the physical human environment ugly. Violent crimes, battery, rape, murder, and so on, sex crimes that spread disease, and drug crimes that spread disease and addiction have direct adverse impacts on the physical health of humans. Having a shortage of law enforcement and DA equipment, office space, court space, jail space, and so on, are also impacts on the physical environment from increased development. CEQA requires that these impacts be mitigated if the project's impacts are significant by themselves or if they considerably contribute to a cumulatively significant impact. The worse the existing situation, like the revolving jail door and high recidivism, the lower the threshold for determining if a project's impact considerably contribute to a significant cumulative impact. Since we have not mitigated these impacts for 10 years, that is the reasonable time span in which to assess the cumulative impact on law enforcement. So how can we establish cumulative impacts? On page 6061 of the initial study, the North Vista Plaza cumulative projects list 7 residential projects with 573 new single-family residences to be added in the immediate vicinity. Using the average family size of 2.43 from the population and housing section, this gives us an increase in local population of 1,392. In addition, as myvalleysprings.com stated in our letter of May 14, 2007, the cumulative projects list is incomplete. There are many other local residential, past, present, and future projects that should have been included. At a minimum, Gold Creek Estates, which is in the immediate vicinity and currently about halfway completed, is adding a projected population of 936. And if other nearby projects moving through the planning process were included, such as Mission Ranch, Old Golden Oak, Spring Ranch Estates, Charbonneau Estates, and Pawnee Ranch, the population will further increase by 3,667. By totaling population projections for North Vista Plaza and the staff report's cumulative projects list, 1,392, Gold Creek currently under construction, 936, and projected nearby future projects, 3,667, we get an increase in population of 5,995 people. At 1 deputy per 1,000 population, this cumulative study shows a huge impact on law enforcement with a potential projected need for 6 deputy positions. The statement there is less than significant project or cumulative impacts to police protection is incorrect. Furthermore, 4 of the 13 projects listed above have already been approved for development without any mitigation for law enforcement impacts. Additional projects should not go forward unless impacts to law enforcement services and county facilities are adequately mitigated. The negative deck said the project would create an increase in law enforcement equal to 38% of an officer. At a minimum, the county should charge North Vista Plaza for at least 1/3 of the cost of providing equipment, office space, jail space for 1 officer. And if cumulative impacts are to be addressed, these costs should be increased accordingly. If the county cannot charge fees without an adopted board policy in place, it should make some other provision to address these and other negative impacts. Can some kind of placeholder language be put in North Vista Plaza conditions of approval? When the staff report for Saddleback Hills was written last June, in response to Sheriff Department concerns about negative impacts to staffing and lack of mitigation funding, the planning report said, quote, "The project will provide funding on a fair share basis when the method for collecting that funding is established by the Board of Supervisors," close quote. We don't know if that language was included in the final project conditions, but perhaps some type of placeholder language could be included for North Vista Plaza in lieu of actual mitigation for law enforcement or facility fees. One way or the other, something needs to be done to protect the public safety and the county's finances. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker, members of the board. My name is Michael Sulligo. I'm the fire chief with Foothill Fire District in Valley Springs. We are the agency responsible for protecting this new subdivision that we're talking about today. I've worked with Mr. Pringle for quite some time and his staff in regards to this project. We have done some mitigation factors in regards to placement of hydrants and some no parking zones for fire access. I find this project to be good in my perspective. We've worked very good with him. My reason for being here today is to bring up an issue that has been a representation by a few people involved in this project over the years. This started in the formation of Foothill Fire District in the late 1999 and 2000 years. There was a 1-acre parcel that was set aside for the Foothill Fire District in either this project or the smaller project that Mr. Pringle had been talking about earlier today. In mitigation for that lot, we have had some discussion with Mr. Norrie and Mr. Pringle, and also in addition to Mr. Tanner, in regards to writing a check basically to the fire district for $50,000 in lieu of that particular lot or parcel. I have not seen or heard any representation today in regards to that, and my worry is that if this subdivision is approved, that it will just fall off the cliff and never be recognized again. I'd like someone to address that. I have been in conversation with Mr. Selman in regards to this subject. He knows about it, and I would like to hear some comment on that down the road here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would ask that the proponent and staff prepare an answer for that question by the end of this hearing.
Good morning. My name is Jim Kavanaugh. I've been involved in the general plan update process. I was at the October 23rd visioning meeting with the Board of Supervisors, and I was very encouraged by the tone of that meeting that future development would be planned, and that some of the guiding principles that might be used in that would be the Iwani principles. I was also at the December 5th San Andreas visioning meeting. And again, when we came to that meeting, the citizens that attended that meeting, part of the packet that we received to do our visioning was a copy of the Iwani principles, which we could use as guidelines in our visioning process. A couple of those principles are a community should contain a diversity of housing types, and another one is that rather than allowing initiated development, local governments should take charge of the planning process. Supervisor Callaway, I think at the meeting on October 23rd, you said that the Board of Supervisors had some very difficult decisions that they were going to have to make. I would hope that today on this project that you would make a decision that is in the best interest of Calaveras County and the best interest of the residents of Valley Springs. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to address the board at this time? Yes, ma'am.
I wasn't sworn in earlier, so do I need to swear in?
No, she's been sworn in.
We'll assume that you'll abide by the principles of truth-telling.
I'm Julie Moore. I'm a resident of Valley Springs. I've lived there and worked in this community and county for close to 18 years. And I applaud myvalleysprings.com for their commitment and what they're doing to bring light to different situations and projects in our area and throughout the county. However, I do not believe that they have the right to require the developer to change their zoning here. Under the rules, as they said, R3 does allow them the right for single-family dwellings. I think that they noted the 5 there that will be in the lower price range, but I think that the 48 clustered units is a really good plan. I agree with one of the new residents of the county that said, why build it before the use? We do have the need for that, but I think the cluster housing does allow for that, especially starting at 982 square feet in those units. We've seen it work very well in Murphy's with Jack Coutts project off Bret Hart. Those are smaller units. They're more affordable. Seniors that have wanted to move down from the snow, it's facilitated that very well. Also, I don't know that they realize the costs. My husband's in the construction field. Commercial liability for condos makes it almost impossible for a developer these days to do it. And so I think that should be something that when the developer says they can't pencil it out into the project, the liability on a project of that size and that many units for condos, it could be well over $1 million just for the liability policy. Condo liability is very difficult to obtain, and it's very costly. So I think that the open space with the traffic and the tree mitigation that they have proposed here, I think that this project fits well in Valley Springs. We've worked with both the developers in the past through my business, and we find them very reputable. I think that the concerns for housing are valid, but I don't think that they pertain to this particular project because they're not required to do those. It does give them the option for the single family, and I ask that you approve the project as it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the board at this time on the subject? Going once. All right, that's it. I'd now request staff to respond to the questions that were raised. Actually, first let me close the public hearing. Always wanted to use this. And could staff now respond to the questions that were raised?
Mr. Chair, would you like us to check the, Stephanie Morano, Director of Community Development, would you like us to check the zoning issue before we respond, maybe take a break, or do you want us to respond to the comments?
Actually, I view that as somewhat central to what happens next, and it would be nice to have a correct answer to the question raised. At this point, then, how long will you need to ascertain this?
10 minutes.
All right. We will take a 10-minute recess to find out the answer to that very important question. Before we hear from staff in response to the questions raised and the statements made, I'd like to let the board know that it looks like one of those eating lunch in days, and so there will be an order form for sandwiches that will come down the row shortly.
Can we just finish up the brownies?
Yes, we can. Ms. Moreno.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us the 10 minutes. We have confirmed that the staff report is correct. There is no commercial zoning on this property. The applicant has indicated that he realizes that he made a mistake in his presentation. Is that correct?
All right. That's helpful. And glad we were right.
Yes. It's always nice.
All right. Would you like to respond to the speakers that brought statements forward?
Yes, I'm going to go through some of the general comments. There may be some enhancements needed by Planning Director Robert Seldman and Deputy County Counsel Janice Elliott. So there will be subsequent comments from both of them after I go through the speaker list. On speaker number one, the issue of conversion of R3 zoning to R1, we believe we have that this has already allowed construction on the site, that this is the R3 to R1 was at our suggestion. It is not included in the housing element as was recognized by the speaker. The fact is that we cannot compel developers to build condos or townhouses or apartments in their projects. What we do is we take their project applications and try to make them the best that we can be given the zoning and a general plan that's in place. We have done that on this project. It does not look the same as it was when it came in. Planning did did get involved in this project to try to enhance it. But the fact is, in this particular county, those who have come forward and attempted to build affordable housing, multifamily housing, have had numerous obstacles put up for them, at times litigation, and there is a limit of people that are in-house or in this county right now that are willing to do apartments. We just lost our last apartment that had been permitted because of an inability for that person to negotiate with Caltrans satisfactorily to make the project worthwhile. So it's a long-term issue to address the disappearing R3 property within the county, or the inability for the county to get multifamily housing in. We do not feel it should be on the back of this particular project to solve that problem. And the technical details of that will be handled by Mr. Selman. The discussion relative to 10 versus 5, it is true that myvalleysprings.com and other people at the outside negotiation on this project wanted to see 10 units as a compromise to what was originally proposed for multifamily. In discussions with the developer, we did not feel that that worked out. The developer had some serious concerns about it, and it is our belief that it is CDA's recommendation that we did not relinquish our authority for recommendations by participating in the stakeholder meeting. Speaker number 2, the road Berkesee is going to punch through. That is part of the county's plan to provide circulation. We believe that it is appropriate. We would look at it as not as adding additional traffic to an unlighted intersection, but actually allowing people at the unlighted intersection to flow up to where the new light will be. The opposite argument that was made. Speaker number 3. The applicant has committed to deed restriction on the 5 homes. So if they're less than $200,000, they will be sold at less than $200,000. The fact that it's deed restricted means that the Department of Finance figures come into play for what the target income and housing prices end up. The assumptions that were used for the handout could change and do change as market changes, as the Department of Finance figures inflate for incomes in this area, as housing prices change. But the fact is he's committed to 5 deed restricted lots, and they would have to meet the state's guidelines on that for the price of the housing. We do not believe that, from our review of this in the past, we believe that moderate was closer to 240, low income was close to 200, but again, it depends on what assumptions you're using and what's happening with the market and loans. Speaker number 4. The applicant did change the drainage plans for this project significantly after the first meeting. There were some errors in the original calculations, I believe, as far as what the net flow off the site would be. But the bottom line is there's a condition on the map that they have to meet the current ordinances. And as you know, we have a state-of-the-art brand new ordinance on stormwater drainage. So regardless of what was presented in the plans, they have to satisfy Public Works and make sure that it's been done correctly, and that there's no impact to other properties as a result of this project. But we do believe that it has been adequately presented and mitigated. The comment that says our staff report says additional taxes will provide funding for law enforcement. I couldn't find that in the documents that I had here today. That is not CDA's position. If there was an oversight, this was a contracted staff report. If there was an oversight on that, I apologize, but it is not our position, nor I believe the county's, that property taxes are paying for the additional impacts on development projects. Janice Elliott will address the issue, the CEQA issues relative to whether it's CEQA required or a social issue on law enforcement. The issue with Foothill Fire, the requirement of a parcel was on a previous project, not associated with this project, of Floyd Noriad, where the property was to be dedicated for the firehouse. He is in negotiations with Foothill Fire to exchange another lot or money, but the fact is that requirement is on that map, not on this map. So the failure for that to happen doesn't impact this project. That being said, Mr. Norriad was here today, said he is working on that. It is his intention. It will be completed by the time his map is recorded, if not sooner. And I just want to go into the record that we're expecting that dedication and or in lieu fee will occur as part of that project, but it is not a condition on this map. And Foothill Fire is here if you'd like additional information on that. We believe that this project does meet exactly what we've been hearing out of the visioning meetings and the recent policy guidelines from the board, that projects are going to be on water and sewer, existing water and sewer infrastructure, or new infrastructure, but not on septic systems and wells as in the past. It provides for habitat protection. It provides for roads to county standards, and indeed in this case is improving the level of service on the state highway as well. And it provides for affordable housing, much more so than we've seen on previous projects. So we believe that this has been an example of how the board has moved forward in looking at new ways of smart growth, and that this is a good project. Relative to Speaker 7's comments on the ability for people to build condos, again, that is correct. We are hearing that the insurance issue, liability insurance issues on condos, you have to have a significant number, hundreds of them, in order to self-insure to avoid the increased costs of providing those. There is not a lot of willing developers out there that are in the condo business. I mean, again, we can't make a developer build a certain type of product. They come in with their application. We can ask for it voluntarily, but there's nothing in our housing element that would require them to do that.
There was, excuse me, but my notes show on speaker number 4 that there were two issues. One was the hydrology, and the other was a general question about cumulative impact and how we're assessing it.
I'm sorry. Janice Elliott will address the cumulative impact issue.
Okay. Thank you. Further staff response?
Mr. Chairman, a couple of things. Specifically, relative to the low-income condition, map condition 2-9 specifically requires prior to the improvement of the subdivision map, the applicant will enter into a recordable lease agreement with the county to commit 5 housing units to be sold at an average sales price of $200,000. These units would be sold to buyers meeting bona fide low-income limits as set forth by the state HCD. Deed restriction would be placed on the units so that resaleable prices to future buyers would be indexed over 30 years to low-income limits. So the commitment truly is that these units are initially sold as low-income and continue to be low-income eligible buyers. It provides for bracketing with time. The issue is not the sales price at any one point in time. It is the fact that the purchaser would be a low-income qualified family. That could be an individual, or it could be a family of many individuals. And that number, the number of family members, is what constitutes the qualification as low-income, not the price of the unit. So it's the best way we can do it. It's an approximate price, give people an idea of what we're talking about, but the law really is the qualification is low-income. And that is set by the state, and it's in our housing element as well. And it varies both annually and by the number of family members in the family.
Just to clarify this, at one point we were informed that the price itself might fluctuate, but really what you're talking about is who qualifies and the income. But the price of the house is fixed in this document.
Well,
or am I?
No, it's up to the developer which units and how they do it.
I should say the average price is fixed.
Yeah, that's all we're trying to do is show that's the type of unit that would normally qualify. We're not trying to lock in the price. We're trying to lock in the qualification as a low-income qualified family.
I understand. Okay.
The other question that was raised was the question of the drainage study. The county, I will tell you, drainage studies are normally a requirement of the final map, and the county condition 3-2 parentheses 7 does require that all of the appropriate hydrology studies be provided to the Public Works Department and approved prior to recording the final map. So there will be, again, an engineered certification by the applicant's engineer filing the information, plus it has to be reviewed and accepted by the Calaveras County Engineering Department as meeting all requirements of code before that map can go of record. So that is where that's handled. We'll let Janice deal with the big stuff, and I have a few minor corrections that I want to get to before we get back to the last few details.
Janice Elliott, County Council, responding to the letter submitted by Joyce Teckel, myvalleysprings.com. CEQA defines a significant impact on the environment at CEQA Guidelines Section 153A2 as meaning a substantial or potentially substantial adverse change in any of the physical conditions within the area affected by the project. An economic or social change by itself shall not be considered a significant effect on the environment. A social or economic change related to a physical change may be considered in determining whether the physical change is significant. That particular section has been interpreted by the courts, most recently with respect to an apartment building in San Francisco, where the public comments were that because of the number of people moving in there, child care was a significant physical impact as a result of that project, and the court held no, that was a social impact, not a physical impact. There's also a prior published case, I don't have the site with me today, but it dealt with almost exactly the comments today with respect to vandalism, violent crimes, etc., and the court held that that was a social impact not related to the physical environment. What CEQA says is that if a particular social impact is a result of a physical change, for example, what's also stated in these comments is the need for new facilities, which are a physical change to the environment, such as the court and the jail. Staff's response to that is that those particular facilities are already funded through other measures, and they are in the process of being property being acquired and constructed. So this particular project does not have a significant impact on the need for those facilities. With respect to the cumulative impacts, if there is no physical impact, obviously there is no cumulative physical impact. However, saying all that, the board does have the ability to mitigate impacts outside of CEQA as long as you meet certain general legal principles, such as you've all heard, nexus, and the Mitigation Fee Act, which requires you to take certain procedural steps if you do want to mitigate impacts such as the need for additional sheriff, other things such as the need for additional fire protection, things that don't require the construction or impact on the physical environment. But we currently do not have a fee in place to fund impacts to law enforcement services, so you cannot impose a fee without showing a nexus between the subdivision or the project and its impact on law enforcement services. It's my understanding that that is something that's being considered primarily by both the sheriff and also, with some respect, in other potential fees, such as the public facilities fee that's being proposed. But currently we do not have such a fee in place, and I do not consider that a CEQA impact.
Any further staff comment in response? Any public response to the comments?
Joyce Teckel again. I would merely request that the board vigorously approach bringing the facility fees forward, because the projects are going to keep coming. And when they're in, we can't go back and get those fees that will be needed because of those impacts. Thank you.
Let me add one other comment to that, which I should have stated before. I apologize. When a fee is in place, generally under the Mitigation Fee Act, it's required to be collected at the building permit stage if you make certain findings. Otherwise, it is required to be collected at the occupancy permit stage. With the fees we have in place, we have made the findings to collect them at the building permit stage, so I anticipate we will make those additional findings for any future fees. Vested tentative subdivision maps are not protected from fees that are not currently in place, which means if you in the future do adopt a particular fee for public facilities and it's a new fee, this project and any other project that we approve will be required to pay those fees at either the building permit stage or the occupancy permit stage. So the only things that you will not capture are any building permits or occupancy permits that go through before you enact such a fee. But sometimes there's a misunderstanding out there that vesting tentative means that they're not subject to these fees, and that's not what the cases have held. So if the fee is not in place, they're not protected. The only thing you cannot do is increase an existing fee and require the MAP to pay that, although there are some exceptions to that also.
Thank you.
So if you increase the road impact mitigation fee after this is, they have their tentative map, we can't go back?
You can.
It depends. You cannot collect an additional fee on projects that have a development agreement. However, the vesting aspect of the MAP is only with respect to a certain time period.
I see we have another speaker on the topic.
I'll be brief. Jim Aceto, Captain, Calaveras County Sheriff's Office. The Nexus study that Ms. Elliott referred to has been completed. We plan on presenting that to the board, and it will directly show the impacts of both residential and current and commercial developments as they relate to sheriff's staffing fees. We have kind of a workforce availability factor and a calculator that will clearly show that to you. When this project was presented to us, we didn't have that completed. So from our perspective, we don't see a reason for our inability to have this study completed to delay this particular project. But we do respectfully disagree with the fact that these projects are a social impact. They are a real physical impact to the sheriff's office. And while some people have a perspective that crimes may be a social problem as it relates to our radio infrastructure, that is a physical impact. If you were going to build a residential or commercial development in an area where there is no emergency radio communications, that is a physical impact, the fact that we cannot talk with one another, the fire department, the ambulance in those areas. That study will also outline that, so we'll be bringing that to you, I think, next month.
You do have a study session scheduled on it.
All right, thank you. All right, if there are no further speakers from staff or public, I'd like to bring, yes, sir.
If I could, we presented, and I just gave a copy. I addressed to you earlier that we had a number of basically typos and clarifications. I gave you a copy. Those are in strike-through format. And there's extra copies on the podium if anyone really does care to see it. And as every correction has its own error, typos are just the bane of every planner and every large document that there is. On the findings correction, it's a 3-page document, and it's first of all just clarifying on page 18 of 35. I believe, is that your top page?
Yes,
okay.
It is.
That is clarifying the language relative to the addition of the second basin, the second large basin, to accommodate drainage. It was very awkward the way it was written, and this is correct. Other than there is a typo, that should be that the detention basin serving, not the detention basis. So with your leave, we'll fix that. Again, it's indicating that it has been increased in size and so on, and it's within the 7.3-acre open space that was previously set aside. And the third change on page 17 is a true typo. We have just temporary instead of temporary, but spelled correctly. Relative to the second set of changes I gave you, it is on the actual resolution, and there are but 3 or 4 minor changes. One of them not quite so minor. We have on the front page, we have the correct project number. That was totally my fault, and we deleted the findings that were incorrectly left in from a prior project when I took this as an example, and we added the correct language relative to the evidence. That's fine. I think it's straightforward. Again, it just describes the proximity of the clustering. It's one of our findings. On the what would be my third page therein, there is a correction of the number of 166 lots is actually 167 lots, as has been represented throughout. After the mitigation measures on conditions 2-4 and conditions 2-5, this is the clarification that we had at the Planning Commission. We specifically said when in doubt in dealing with these oaks where you could do excavations around the roots, we would let the final call be made by a licensed arborist, and this language is just correcting that. And the last language is trying to clarify, it's the next to the last, it's about 3 pages from the back. It's the public works requirement, and it's trying to express the creation of the right-of-way in those cluster units. And it is simply stating that there is a requirement that there be 40 feet of right-of-way at the garage. Okay, so between those opposing garages, although the right-of-way will neck down to 25 feet, in the driveway portions in front of the garage, it will extend to 40 feet. And that's, again, is just trying to clarify that language. I apologize for the lateness of getting this to you. This is, again, purely technical at this point. It does not change any of the conditions that were added. And that is all at this point.
At this point, is staff requesting that we take action on this today, that we take further input and review for action on another day? What is your recommendation to us after hearing from the public on this?
If the board is content with the recommendations as presented, we're prepared to ask you to make that determination today. If there's significant changes that you want to the language contained within the recommendations, we would, and that amends the findings, we would want an opportunity to do that and come back to the board on a future consent agenda. The next available, I think, is in 2 weeks. And just to make sure that we've captured everything that you said. But again, that is if there's significant changes that require changes to the findings.
Well, let's find out. I'd like to start board comments with the supervisor from the district in which this project is proposed. This would be Bill Claudino in District 1.
Okay. Make a couple of observations first. I want everybody to appreciate the fact that we are going along with the governor's request to flex our power. You notice the heat's not in here today. I've been noticing it all morning. And the other thing is I want to thank Mr. Jones for pointing out to all of us that the supervisors are listed as low income. So maybe I'll go shopping for a new residence down here. I have to say that right off the start here, I am overwhelmingly in favor of this project, folks. I really think that I've been, just like a couple of the speakers, I have been following and reading the documents and the exchanges and the meetings regarding this project for a couple of years now. And I have to say, from my point of view, arguably, this is, I believe, the best project that's come to this board in that time. And I truly believe that. To reiterate some of the comments that were made here today regards this project, try to keep in mind, first of all, and first, last, and always, that this is not a final map approval request. This request is simply to approve a tentative map, which has been several years in the making. The zone change here, again I reiterate, was done at the request of our planning department for what I consider valid reasons. The change in zoning really has little, if anything, to do with the type of structure that will be constructed on this project, because these single-family dwellings are a permitted use in R3. And remembering again that to this date, the county has no inclusionary codes or statutes that are going to require affordable housing. This is strictly voluntary on the part of this applicant. The 5 units that the applicant has agreed to construct and sell to low income, in some people's minds are not adequate, but I have to remind you this is more than any other development thus far has volunteered to do. And the developer has provided the pro forma budget here that shows that those 5 units come at a dear cost, nearly $500,000 to the applicant. And I'm not talking about loss in profit. I'm talking about this is what they are going to cost the developer applicant to construct and sell these at that price. There were issues of possible significant impact on this project initially. However, these issues have been mitigated to less than significant impact. There's several pages of mitigation measures on Exhibit A. Since the very first time I saw the plans and a very tentative map, this project has been taken back, taken apart, analyzed. The developer applicant has complied with, in my opinion, everything possible. He's even gone overboard on some things to make sure that this project is in addition to the community. At a public meeting a few months ago, this board, several weeks to a couple months ago, this board gave direction in support of various considerations for developments going forward, which resulted in the applicant further modifying the provisions on his project and map. They were, if I remember correctly, public water and sewer, the protection of habitat, including the addition of cluster housing to projects for a more efficient use of the infrastructure, building roadways to county standards, and to provide affordable housing. This developer has done all of those. Those things have been requested of him by the Community Development Agency, and the Community Development Agency was given that direction by this board. And as I say, I reiterate, the developer has complied with that direction. The developer is also in compliance with county codes. Now, some folks are arguing if our codes are adequate or not adequate or should be changed or what have you, and those are issues that may be valid. But at this time, we have these codes. And those are the codes that any developer, any applicant coming to do business with the county is requested to comply with. In my opinion, this developer has done that at every aspect of the project. The reason I'm impressed, well, there's various reasons that I'm impressed with this project, and those were pretty much stated by the developer applicant during their presentation. Open space is a big issue. 13 to 15% of this entire site is open space. We're talking about parks or recreational areas. The developer has set aside area for a park, and it's not just an open field. He has committed to making this an active park with walkways, benches, perhaps playground equipment, or whatever seems to be necessary. When it comes to the sensitive issue of preserving the oaks, I think they've done an exemplary job, and that part of this project has been modified several times in order to accommodate the wishes of those people who hold that dear. There's a small oak woodlands on this property. The entire oak woodlands has been preserved. The developer also intends to plant a great number of trees. This will result in a net addition. Now, some people say, well, you know, but those trees are small, and they go, well, of course they are. But trees are a living entity, and most of the living entities, all that I know of on this planet, have a finite life. Old oak trees die, young oak trees come along, and yes, it's not instant gratification. But when you increase the number of oaks on any given parcel by 2 or 3-fold, I count that as a plus. Really. The drainage issue has been massaged and refigured, and still seems to be an item of concern. But according to the engineering that the applicant has done, they have addressed the issues that have been before this board on numerous, if not every, development in that general area for the past couple of years. Those being not contributing to the Cosgrove Indian Creek difficulties we're having down there. The idea that there is no peak flow from anywhere on the site, as suggested and recommended by more than one group, including CSERC. They have reconfigured their detention activities, added a considerable amount of volume to the detention basins, also relocated at least one of the detention basins to accommodate that. I find it very noteworthy and commendable that the developer has gone about the biological issues here by following the direction of the biologist rather than telling the biologist what to make fit here. I think that's commendable. Along with the grading issues have been a big issue, especially on developments down in this area. And in order to develop a piece of property in any way, if you put roadways in, obviously the roadways have to be flat. There's some grading that needs to be done if you're going to construct roadways and building pads. And in my opinion, they've done an admirable job of following the contour. The idea that the cut and fill on this project is balanced is important and something that we should appreciate. I reiterate, folks, that this is a tentative map, and there is room to massage the minor details between acceptance of a tentative map and that of the final map. The only other thing that I wish to mention here is with regard to the law enforcement fees. I do not disagree that the addition of hundreds or even thousands of people are going to have impact on services. Of course they will. But from my opinion, those fees are appropriate to be assessed when either a building or occupancy permit is issued. The approval of a tentative map is not impacting society or making the physical impact that's been discussed today, in my opinion. What may impact, and probably will impact, is when people start to live there and need these services. So I have no argument with the fact that additional population is going to require additional fees, and the additional population is going to have impact, whether it be social or physical. But until the population increases, I don't believe those fees need to be assessed at that time, especially at the time of this tentative map. One of the speakers mentioned the need for or not need for the apartment style or condo style. You know, any business person, whether it's this applicant or another, is going to do their own market research and determine exactly.
Can we take a quick break?
Can I have the kitchen staff clean this up? They're about ready to leave for the day. Can they just do it quickly and out the back door?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Leave some of those brownies if you could, please. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well. Okay.
Take a 5-minute recess.
We'll take a 4.5-minute recess here. We'll call the meeting back into session here. And last we checked in, Bill Claudino had the floor, and we'll continue to have it now.
Okay. Well, I forgot where I left off, so I'm going to start over.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah.
That's cruel and unusual punishment.
It's cruel and unusual. Steve's about ready to get the tines of sand out here
yes,
for me.
Well, here we go.
Anyway, folks, in case there's any doubt about how I feel about this project, I hope I've erased that. And I just feel that this developer has done everything not only requested, but everything possible to make this a great project. I like this project. There is no question that given the amount of documents that are even currently, these aren't all the documents that have come through here regarding this project, but the ones that are just here today are 4 or 5 inches thick. It would be virtually impossible to have any topic, whether it's a project or a novel, and have that much verbiage in there and not nitpick it to death. This is a good project. This is something that is needed for the area. They have addressed all of the concerns that this board has given direction to. They have been responsive, in my opinion, to every request that's been made of them. And again, this is a tentative map, and before the approval of the final map, I'm sure that there will be other issues that may need and may actually undergo some massaging. But I am wholeheartedly in favor of this. The issue of R3, you know, this project was not R3 before 1999, as we heard today. And there may or may not be a surplus or shortage of R3 zoning in the county. But just as in 1999, this R3 was created, in the future, R3 can be created. And we are we're in the process right now of updating our general plan, which will help designate those places, not just in the Valley Springs area, but throughout Calaveras County, where best located are various zones. And unless we are going to say right here and now, we are never going to entertain zoning amendments again, then I say in the future, and according to our updated general plan, adequate R3 zoning can and probably will be obtained, just like any other zone for which a need is obvious or requested. So, be that as it, that's for now the end of my comments, but I'm very much in favor of this project.
Thank you, Bill. Supervisor Callaway, do you have comments?
Sure. Except I'm not going to go as fast as Claudina.
And why would that be?
I want to say on the lighting portion, I did talk to Mr. Pringle yesterday, so that there's no surprises on any comments I might make today. I like the fact that the initial study addressed the lighting, but it does not address the lighting for houses, and that's where a lack of a dark sky ordinance comes into play. I would like Mr. Pringle to consider that when he does the CC&Rs. I don't know that we can mandate it. If we can, I would like to somehow do that, because under the mitigation measure 1, it just says street lighting. It does not say lighting for the residents themselves. Parking, I know one of these documents says there'll be 56 parking spots for guest parking. I could not find 56 on the map. So if there are 56, I want to make sure that there are at least 56. Since there is no parking on the street, maybe Mr. Pringle can clarify. He did clarify that for me yesterday. But on whether there is or is not parking on the street. I had read that there was no parking or limited parking on the streets. And so I just know what happens under Roman numeral 3.1.4 A, no parking shall be allowed on the roadways except at the end of road. K, parked vehicles shall not extend beyond the parking stall. I want to thank Mr. Pringle for writing the letter to the board on January 14. It did clarify things for me. The Oaks I appreciate for the initial study on the oaks and on Appendix E that the 2 groves of oak habitat will be saved or cultivated, but there was nothing in there on a year on the maintenance of the trees. The trees also that are being, the ones that are being planted, which are going to be native and non-native species, I could find nothing in the initial study that addressed the number of years, and I think we've been using 7 years. I didn't know if that would occur now or if it would occur at the final map, but it needs to be in there. Also, the park, the recreation area, I believe was 0.75 acres. I think Mr. Pringle said a half an acre, whether it's a half or 0.75. The Parks and Rec Commission, I thought under their recommendation we'd be talking 2.5 acres. If it meets the criteria and the intent of where we are going, that's fine, because it was 2.5 per 1,000 residents and not 1,000 residents per project. On Appendix A, page 2 and 3, I'm not real clear. It was addressed by Mr. Pringle, but I didn't understand it when I read Appendix A about there is seasonal wetlands. The testing was done during the summer and fall when that is at the driest time. We say there is no wetlands areas we need to be concerned with, though it wasn't quite that clear in the appendix when I read the consultant's report on that. Or maybe it was excuse me. I apologize. I really thought I was organized, but been taking so many notes here. In fact, no, I don't apologize, because I did my homework, and that's just the way it is.
That's known as?
On Appendix C, the geological testing was done in the summer and fall. That was on page 9. Will this impact the wetlands runoff? I couldn't find a nexus there. I'm sure there was. I'm not. But it says the investigations were performed during summer and late fall when both conditions tend to be at their lowest level. And that was, per the consultant, based on our limited data. The interesting thing about this project, it really showed weaknesses in the county's own codes. Appendix E, page 1 and 2, which had to do with the wetlands. The consultant quite appropriately said Calaveras County does not have ordinances implementing the provisions of state law and regulatory guidelines concerning the oak woodlands. I don't hold the applicant responsible for that. I do hold the board and the county, the board really, responsible for that. To kind of really to cut to the chase in the interest of time, I do not have a problem supporting the vesting tenant of subdivision track map, and the road ordinance modification request. But I will not be supporting the change in the ordinance on the rezoning. The fact that our zoning code, again, it isn't the applicant, our zoning code says you can do an R1 and an R3. That is a weakness, again, on the part of the county's zoning code and something that we should be rectifying. But in 1999, when this project came through, it was a very mixed development. The total project, it had R1, R3, it had commercial, and Mr. Norrie, who he and I have had lots of discussions, probably starting with utility poles way back, really did a good job of doing a master plan for this area. So there were several things that were mentioned. Mr. Pringle said this project was inappropriate for high density, yet he said, quote, "We have high density detached." So either we do or we don't. He also had stated in his letter of January 14, okay. I might paraphrase it. I did write down. He did state that he was concerned about let me just get it because I really want to quote him. Quote, "Housing goals have been foremost in my mind." And as was pointed out earlier in Appendix D in the housing element, we have, in the recent houses, we have 411 single-family homes. That was in that cumulative one that I think Mr. Jones handed out. It's also in the initial study. So there's more here saying that we should be having R3 than we should not be having R3. And the fact that our zoning code allows it, I understand it. He did play by the rules. I appreciate that. I cannot support it, though. Thank you.
Supervisor Thomas, do you have any comments on this project?
I'll be brief. Although this is technically in Supervisor Claudino's districts, or in his district, if a leaf were to blow off one of those oak trees, it probably would land in the 5th district. So I have an affinity toward and I've been looking at this project as well because of its impact on the 5th district residents. This is a mountain of paper and mountain of consideration here. As some of you may know, I have some background in the construction business, not for a while, but I would submit to you that there's as much scrutiny. This project has been submitted to as much scrutiny as a 300-acre project or a 3,000-acre project. I mean, there were some early on criticisms that this project had not been submitted to an environmental impact report. But I would also ask anybody to explain to me what aspects of a full-blown EIR haven't been covered in this mitigated negative deck. I mean, they've put more experts on the head of a pen than I've ever seen. It's really quite remarkable and commendable. Thank you for volunteering to do that. I I'm very well aware that you did that without being coerced into it. It was just in the best interest of the project. I am very. It pleases me to see the Board of Supervisors moving in a direction of consistency. We made we raised the thresholds of expectation some months ago when we took the emergency or the urgency ordinance off. I think that this project complies with sort of in advance of everything that we had asked the future development community to do on proposed developments. It complies with all that. So this is consistent. The board is consistent. If the board approves this project, and I hope that they will, it will be a very consistent move. The point that I'm trying to make is that there have been some people here that have really, in my mind, put forth a very odd argument, certainly not consistent with the arguments that I have heard them in the past, that they're saying that we're downzoning this project. I mean, I've been involved in these types of considerations for decades, and usually the hue and cry is that the developer is coming in with a project that has been zoned in the past R1, and he wants to put some R3 on it, and the room gets filled with people that say that represents too much density. And here we have a situation where they want to downzone it. I've never seen that happen before, and the room is almost filled with people saying that there's not enough density. I made reference to what I hope we're getting consistent, and then here's an inconsistent argument. I would submit to you that putting 327 units on this parcel, if the proponent were here asking for that approval, the same people that are here saying that there's not enough density would be here saying that it's too dense, and I'm troubled by that. I think that this is a very good project. It's the right project at the right place at the right time. I think that if we were to somehow disapprove this project, it would put it would throw every proposed future development or developer into a state of absolute shock and amazement. That what more could we do? We've done everything that we've been asked to do. So I'm very much in favor of this project and intend to vote accordingly.
Supervisor Tryon.
My sentiments correspond to those of Supervisor Claudino and Thomas. I would just give two side comments. Number one is I've been here, 23 years, and this is the first time we've had an organized group, environmental or community-oriented, ever say that there wasn't enough density. It's always too much density. So I guess I've stuck around long enough to have a first that in 23 years it's not enough density. So I will note that, but I think, quite frankly, if they had submitted the proposal that Colleen submitted to us, that you still would have been here in opposition. But be that as it may, my second comment would be is that you can do all the government planning and all these proposals, and we want apartments and we want condominiums, et cetera. In the final analysis, you have to build to what the market demands. And quite frankly, the market isn't demanding a lot more apartments unless it wants to be subsidized. And then on the list that My Valley Springs or whomever it was that gave to us, just about everything subsidized. So unless it's going to be subsidized and you're working under HUD or some other subsidy program, you have to build to what the market wants. And I think the developer is accommodating the demands of both the community and staff to the extent that he can still have a viable commercial project. And so with that, I am supportive of what is presented before us today for the project, and hope the board will proceed with approving it.
Thank you. I also have a few comments and observations, the first of which is that I want to thank the people who participated today. I found the comments to be insightful, well presented, that the atmosphere in this hearing has been calm and deliberative, and I think it helps us learn a lot more than we may have known to begin with. And certainly from this supervisor's perspective, there are several things that that I've learned that I do want to comment upon. First, it's clear to me that some of the things that we are placing on project proponents in this county lead to a great deal of informal discussion and trying to work through things in the absence of having clarity in our policies, our documents, and our approach to things. And I'll make a few specific observations on this. First, we have an R3 zone, which purports to encourage high density and with the possibility of that actually being affordable, and yet in the same breath, in the same part of our zoning code, it says, well, it could also, R3 can be just like R1. What's the point of that, and who's going to understand that? We can have a good argument about it, but there's no clarity to our document, and I personally feel that that needs to be changed, and that it's not the developer's fault here. We need to look in the mirror and find the culprit for this. I don't think we should wait on that kind of thing as we whittle away down to no possibilities for density. And by the way, I want to somewhat separate myself from a couple of comments that were made earlier. There are places in this county for virtually every kind of activity and every kind of housing, and we have stated that we want to see housing responsive to genuine housing needs. We've identified that in our housing elements, and yet we have not responded in actual deeds, and so we wind up in these conversations. Is R3 an appropriate zoning independent from R1? If that's the case, and if we do want to have clear designations for where density belongs, and by the way, I think it should be where you have water, sewer, services, and transportation, and it does look to me, and I found the map helpful in what was presented, that this is one of the very few places that we've actually designated R3 where we have those things. That's a little problematic from my point of view, having a zoning code that means nothing, but having a need that means a whole lot to a lot of people, including many of my constituents. I would like to see this come back before the board, and I'm pleased to see our new CAO in the room, but I think we need to take a look at that and fix it now, not in a year or two or three after we've studied the obvious and come to the obvious conclusion that we could do next week or next month. I have other policy issues. We have a fire department that comes and says they've reviewed a plan that shows a number of cul-de-sacs, and I appreciate them coming forward and giving us that observation. I've also heard from 3 other fire chiefs that say that they really would like us to stop ending every road with cul-de-sacs because they think people die in a flash fire at the end of those cul-de-sacs, and that there needs to be a lot more ingress and egress for this. Now, I also know that the market for people looking to try to sell places tends to prefer the quieter dead-end roads. But when dead end actually means dead, I think that we need to really take a look at it. But in the absence of a policy on it, in the absence of having really decided and listened to our first responders and the people who actually have to deal with this, I find, once again, looking in the mirror is the place to look for a solution, that we as a board need to be clear and make policy on this, listening to the people who are professionals in fire services. Regarding facilities and sheriff and fire and all the other things that we haven't paid for, once again, how do we put this on how many acres was this? 33 acres. Putting that burden on the back of this size of a development it defies the laws of economics and physics. But that should not give us an excuse to not address this as a board. Amador County has very fine facilities because some time ago it put a facilities fee into operation with the support of the public there. Do we wish to do the same? I suggest that we not just be looking at the nexus with law enforcement, that we look at the nexus with all the kinds of services that a county provides, and ask the people of this county what kind of government, what kind of services they expect and would like, and what they're willing to pay for it, and get on with business. But to simply cycle around, and every time a development comes up, where people rightfully know that we have some problems here that are unaddressed, and continue to try to push forward the idea that we should address them. Approval for this project by no means lets us off the hook, and by no means gets us away from having to look in the mirror for where the solution can be found. I say the same basic thing on the question of how we deal with flood zones. I appreciate the fact that we have large basins and that this has been mitigated, but we have got no policy on surfaces in a flood zone, in a place that we have managed to flood in a number of the last 10 years. I think it's time that we develop board policies on this and again look in the mirror for solutions instead of confusing every project proponent with our befuddlements and our dereliction of previous duty to some extent. I'm also impressed by people's continued request that this board take a look at cumulative impacts, not the legal minimum definition, but how do we anticipate assessing them? If we do not have, if our list is incomplete, if we do not, if we don't have a future project list for an entire area, an entire basin, how are we going to even know what to ask for developers? Most of the people I've talked to who have proposals before this county beg us to explain ourselves more clearly, not to throw so many looks, so many whimsical ideas, so many informal meetings over such a long period of time. Let us know what the price of business is. Let us know what you wish in terms of developing an effective community, and we will step up to the plate, is the words I hear. I think it is time that we allow that process to happen. It could expedite the timelines, it could include communities in the process, and it could get a much clearer idea, but it requires a policy basis for each one of these issues, and I would very much hope that during the course of this year that we can establish a lot more specifics and a lot less squirreliness in the way we conduct business. Same thing for Oaks. If we don't have an Oak ordinance, we got a policy, but we don't have an ordinance. We don't have the implementation measures. We don't even have instructions for staff for how to deal with this. So everybody's trying. Good faith efforts occur all the time, and I believe that this proponent came to us in good faith. I think community responded in good faith. I think our staff responded in good faith, but in the absence, again, of clarity, ordinances, policies, we got into a lot more argument and a whole lot less product than we might have ultimately accomplished. And for that, I truly regret, but I think it's imminently and eminently remediable. All this, of course, falls into the context of a general plan and zoning code that has already had more comment than I care to add to at the moment, but I find that a shaky foundation for most of what we do. There are lots of good things in this project. There are lots, and I really do appreciate the 5 houses. I appreciate the traffic signal, the oak mitigation, the grading that was reduced, the holding basins for water, the half-acre park, and the other matters which were mitigated, I think, in response to community concerns. So I will vote for this project, but I want to agendize over this next couple of quarters very specific. We asked a year and 3 months ago for a review on cumulative impact, and not what its legal definition is, but how will we apply what we know about it and what our obligations are, and how will we get the necessary information before us so that it can actually be a full part of our considerations. I'd like to see us deal with what R3 and get that done real fast, because we have an ineffective language on it. So at least those two minimum things, couldn't we get that back in some reasonable and short turnaround? Also, facilities fees, I understand we're getting the sheriff's stuff, but what about the rest of our facilities, and how are we going to address that? I can't wait to see what our new CAO has to say on that. Anyway, I've spoken way too long. I think this thing ran out 3 or 4 times, but I intend to vote for this, but it is with, again, a keen eye to the mirror, and I urge my fellow supervisors to look closely and let's get on with providing a better context for these so that we do not confuse people who are trying to do, in good faith, decent business in this county. I will entertain at this time any further comments from staff before we commence to a vote on the topic.
I do have some specific responses to some of the issues that have been brought up, but I'd like to generally respond to your comments, Mr. Chairman, relative to our inactivity on moving forward on some of these policy issues. I think that there's been a general lack of recognition that we have moved a great distance in the last year and a half. I think the development community has recognized it more than anyone. But I think that the community needs to recognize that we are responding to the things that we hear from them, and that the projects we are bringing forward are better each time we come in. And, for example, floodplain issues are a long-term issue that is going to take us a long time to respond to, as you all know. We had a meeting with FEMA and the Water Resources last week, as a matter of fact, to firm up our policies and procedures. It's going to be a long-term project. However, there's also a local developer that walked in the door not too long ago, wanted to build a commercial project in a floodplain area. Bob Selman told me I can't tell him he can't make application, which I let him win. But I did tell him I would immediately bring it to the board on a recommendation of denial, because I heard this board say they do not want building in floodplain zones. That is how we are implementing the policies of the board until we fix the ordinances. So I would like you to know that we are listening and we are trying to respond, and it may not be always apparent, but we are very cognizant of the direction the board is taking us, and we are trying very hard to be responsive to that. So I just want to address that.
Noted and appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Relative to lighting, Supervisor Callaway, I believe that if there have been other projects where we have put specific conditions to be included in CC&Rs in projects, it's not the way we like to do business. It leaves it up to the CC&R, the Homeowners Association, to enforce. However, you have the ability to draft a condition and put it on this project that you want the CC&Rs to have specific conditions relative to lighting. You can be very specific about that, knowing that the county will have no enforcement authority. So if you have some language that you'd like to propose, it can be added as a condition on the map. Is that correct? Okay. As a condition to be included in the CC&Rs, not as a condition for the county.
No, I understand that. And
Okay.
yes, of course I would, but
I heard
I wanted a dark sky ordinance to address that, which is we're in year 4 or 5 on that. But yes, I mean,
Okay.
and Mr. Pringle seemed receptive to that when we spoke on the phone.
Okay.
Why don't I raise the 3 things that I heard relative to CC&Rs or other things that might be added to this? I heard a question of lighting for houses and whether that might be considered. A second issue was raised about street parking. Where would that be designated, and can that be added if it is not? And finally, the question of tree care, which we've been generally saying that when you plant new trees that there will be some assurance that they will be cared for and live for 7 years or replanted. Those are the 3 things I heard, and I guess what I'd be interested in is the board and is the applicant agreeable to those three conditions.
Actually, Mr. Chair, the tree needs to be bifurcated. Those on private lots would be CC&Rs, but those in the park area, open space area, you could put a condition that the developer be responsible for maintenance. And relative to parking, we actually can put that as a condition on the map, that those will be provided as part of the final map, that you want a minimum of 56 spaces. You can't put that on there and not be in the CC&Rs.
Mr. Pringle, I think I heard him say that.
Stephanie said what I was going to say. But the lighting, I think, is a good idea. If we can just make the exterior house lighting indirect lighting, or I want to make sure that we say that the exterior lighting of the houses is limited in some way.
Okay.
Do you have?
15 watts is fine with me.
Well,
I mean, once people go in and you urbanize an area, the expectation of larger wattage, and if we could do that.
We need to also balance it though with the security concerns we've heard from the Sheriff's Department on.
Yeah. I've heard from the Sheriff's Department.
So
Rita, not everybody lives in a gated community.
He wants, that wasn't appropriate, Bill. He wants, the sheriff had reviewed the dark sky ordinance, and he was fine that we didn't need parking, we didn't need used car lot lighting.
No, I agree, but if we could not designate what wattage on that, but rather the language that was said about indirect lighting, we could talk about meeting the goals of the future dark sky ordinance.
And in other projects we had a 7-year maintenance factor for trees.
And we can put that in here if you would like, on those pieces that are on public or applicant-owned properties. Yes.
Well, one would be recommended. The private part would be recommended for the CC&Rs, and the public part would be given that 7-year requirement under this.
And we can come up with the language for that.
Thank you.
The park and rec area was, again, we didn't have the ordinance in place that would allow us to do this. We heard you. We heard the Park and Rec Commission. We asked the applicant to come up with something, and this is what he did. Instead of just a lot, he's actually developing it and making it useful for people immediately. And the word active with the pathways was something we asked him to do, that it's not just somewhere you sit on a bench, but you actually have some exercise. So, again, he heard us because he heard you. Seasonal wetland issue, the testing done during summer and fall and geological testing, the reality is that if there's any discrepancy between what they have put in their plans and what they actually have on the ground, the feds retain jurisdiction over those issues, and when construction begins, I guarantee if they go into any wetland area, there will be consequences to that. So they're very active, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Corps in the western Calaveras, Valley Springs area.
I just think when I went through it, I found a disconnect between the two appendix sections dealing with wetlands and the geological testing area.
Okay. I agree that this project does show that we have flaws in our zoning ordinances. It's something that we know we're painfully aware of, believe me. We now have added 3 additional staff members as of today, and we're hoping to start working on advanced planning issues. However, the fact that we're in a general plan update right now, we need to make sure that we don't start doing things on zoning ordinances that are going to be in conflict with the overall goals of the general plan update. So it will be another couple of months. The issues, opportunities, and visioning statement will be coming back to you before March 1st, as you requested. The board will give us some additional guidance, and we can start thinking about how to wrap some of these ordinances into those policy guidances, but they need to work hand in hand with the general plan update. We don't want to start bringing a lot of zoning changes predating the general plan update. It could cause us some issues later on down the line.
I would certainly hope that in the case where we have accidentally mixed and matched 2 completely separate types of use under one zoning, that we could correct that relatively quickly.
If the board would like to initiate a zoning amendment, we can put it on the board agenda. It won't apply to anybody that puts in an application in between the time you introduce and the time it goes back to Planning Commission comes back up. So probably all those 11 R3 properties will have projects pending by then, but
I don't.
we can work on it.
On that specific thing, I don't think that our zoning ordinance is as broken as it's been represented here. I mean, other jurisdictions have similar wording in their ordinances, and it's not unusual to allow a single-family residence to be built in an R3. The planning department was quite right that they raised the issue that, okay, that's possible to do that, but don't lose sight of the fact that at some future time, 20 years from now, with the R3 still overlying that area, that somebody could come back in and build additional houses on those lots. So, I mean, I think that was appropriate. That the applicant was asked to change the zoning to R1, and it's difficult for me to see how, as a general policy, that is detrimental to the development of the county to allow a single-family residence to be built on an R3. I mean, we've got that all over the Copper Cove subdivision, where we've got. I mean, it's worked for 35 years to have single-family houses built in an area where the R3 zoning. You know, it would be an unfortunate thing if we came up with a rule that precluded that ability. It's just, I think we better be careful what we ask for there.
What I'd like to suggest is simply that we bring this before a study session where you find anomalies or issues that have come to light during the course of this, that we at least have a more in-depth discussion from the board.
Certainly.
Directing staff on the topic.
I might suggest that perhaps a study session on the provision of condos, townhouses, and apartments might be in order.
Yes.
Because I think Supervisor Tryon made a key point, is that they're not profitable in most cases unless they are subsidized or unless there's a reduction in standards on the projects. And so until we decide if we want to be proactive on our part to help that happen, I don't think we're going to see a lot of movement in that area.
Well, we see Julie brought up Jack Couch's. They're selling for $350,000 to $470,000. And they're selling. And those are the townhouses, Fieldstone, and they're selling for $470,000. There's nothing affordable about it. So
I guess I was specifically talking about affordable apartments, condos, and townhouses.
I just need to make an editorial comment. The Calaveras Business Council was in here and talked about retail leakage. Well, if you want retail, and you're going to be paying $8 to $15 an hour for a job, then where are the people going to live? They're not going to live in the houses that Mr. Pringle's going to build, and they're not going to live in the houses or the townhouses or whatever in Murphy's. End of conversation. I'm sorry. I
would like to encourage
I'd
a
like
study
to chip
session.
in, if I may, for a moment. My sentiments are similar to Supervisor Thomas. I'm not at all. I mean, usually we do R3 and we identify it because R3 is considered not to be always totally compatible with R1. But if you go down to R1, which is what we're trying to establish compatibility, obviously R1's compatible with R1. And again, you have to go where the markets will bear. And I disagree with Marita's comments on, well, you have retail jobs at $15 or $18, et cetera. Well, what are they going to do? Well, obviously, they're not going to have employees if they don't pay enough for employees in the area, because they're not going to commute long distances for such wages. And yet there seems to be plenty of people to fulfill these jobs. And you can look around the retail we have. I mean, what does Starbucks pay? What does Cal Lumber pay? What does, what does the movie theater and Angels pay? What does Treats pay? What does Angels Food or Save Mart pay? What do any of these people pay? And yet, they're not looking for employees. The employees are available, and there's lots of different. There are a lot of different housing arrangements that can be made. You can live at home, which I'm not in favor of my children doing. You can live in an apartment and have 2 or 3, roommates, like we did in college. There are a lot of different. There are a lot of different living arrangements that can accommodate different people at different points in their life. This project we're speaking about today, he has several homes that are I think around 275. Well, I'll tell you what, it's been a long time in my district since I've seen any construction that was new construction that was on sewer, water, roads to standards, did all the environmental mitigation, and was selling homes for $275,000. And probably, it's sort of interesting that we have a national crisis because of mortgage defaults, and we had a boom that drove the price of housing up through the roof. And my God, housing is becoming affordable again, and it's a national crisis, and what are we going to do to prevent it? So, I have a lot more faith in markets than I do in government subsidies. So, end of my editorial.
I see in my notes I neglected to mention one other subject before we carry this to a vote, but it is something that I urge all folks coming into the county to do construction and build projects. It strikes me that if we are to keep the dollar hemorrhage at a minimum, that when people do business in the county, that wherever possible they hire locally and that they buy from local vendors. And I believe there's been some conversation about this, and I would like to at least have the record reflect that.
I agree with you. I have a couple of comments. First of all, I just want to provide you a little information. We, as I say, we're going to start our 38 houses, and we stopped temporarily. But we have it mostly bid out, and we reviewed the subcontractor list, and about half of them are local. And I would say local meaning Valley Springs, Angels Camp, Copperopolis kind of area. I consider that local.
Appreciate that, and I'm hoping you find local vendors as well that can serve your needs.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to the tree ordinance, or the tree condition a little bit. I've been conditioned to preserve trees in the past. 7 years seems like an awfully long time to me. Is it possible that it seems that a tree is going to be well established after 3 years. And so I would request that we be limited to providing or replacing or caring for a tree for a period of 3 years instead of 7.
CDA would not want to take that minimum down from 7 years if the board, we'd like to see some consistency, otherwise it will be negotiated on every project. However, they don't have to physically maintain if they want to provide a source of revenue for that to be worked out with the homeowners association or whatever. That's another avenue. If they're out of the area, the money would be there for the homeowners association to take care of it. That's one option.
So I understand we don't have to bond these trees in some way. We just need to maintain or replace them.
Typically bond to make sure you are.
Provide a mechanism to assure it.
Well, couldn't you do it within the homeowners association and just have a requirement for the first 7 years the homeowners will replace any trees that die? They're the ones that are going to be doing all the maintenance on all this stuff anyway.
You need to provide some funding.
So that would then apply to trees on private lots and on the association common area lots.
We're just talking about the common area.
You're just talking about common area.
Common area.
Yeah, we're not talking private lots.
No.
That's right.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you. And so let me be clear, or let me see if anybody's clear on the following things. On lighting, there seems to be general agreement without specific language. I'm wondering whether there can be something reflected here. Yes, Bob.
We would suggest ultimately that as part of the staff's recommendation, we add 3 conditions to this kind of map. They would be conditions 2-10, which would require the 56 parking places which have been represented, and I actually do believe they're on one of these maps someplace. I just think I can't find them at the moment. But they actually be provided on site as represented by the developer. So it's 56 parking places additionally. There's 6 parking places. 2-11 would be the condition of the 7-year maintenance of the public areas, trees, be provided, and again, we can work that out as to how that's done. That's a condition of the map. And the third would be that there be dark sky provisions added to the CC&Rs for the control of lighting.
Each one of those conditions you could put to the satisfaction of the planning department at the end of it, so that we have the final review.
You can't just say dark sky and ban all lights. It's got to be subject to some reasonableness test.
Right. All of those are in the section that do require the approval of the CDA before they are completed. I'm sorry, I didn't finish that.
I'll give you an sparkler flashlight.
All right. Before we add these things to what we're voting...
Could I ask one question? I didn't understand, Mr. Chair, if the local labor, local vendor thing was something you wanted added into conditions, or if that's just a reference in the record that you wanted.
What? That's a reference in the record at this point. We haven't been provided a mechanism to accomplish that, but I would certainly like us to review that for policy purposes in the future. Certainly in my book, it adds points to any project that comes forward if they're willing to invest in the economy of this poverty-stricken county. But that's, I think that's for future discussion.
I don't even know if that's legal. So
there are elements of it that have been used in other.
Very careful where we're going here.
We did one on
Settle here.
That's right. There are other counties that have such, and what I would suggest is that we add that to the things that the CDA should bring before us and the county council, so that we can examine those and see whether we wish to engage in any of them.
I also wanted to address the cul-de-sac issue. My understanding is that emergency ingress has been provided on the most troublesome of those that might be troublesome for your purposes. And we are encouraging developers on new projects to limit or eliminate cul-de-sacs, so we have been responding to that.
Yes, that's it.
And I think we need to get that in the road ordinance someplace. We want interconnectivity, and we want it to extend beyond the project itself so that we can have sensible circulation when there's future development. Thank you.
I think we should let that be the last word in our discussion, and I would...
Thank you. I would have the last word.
I need about 15
When it's a good one, when you get that, Bill, do you...
I need about 15
Make
minutes.
a motion, Bill, and let's go along.
I would like to... Okay, ready?
Yes.
Okay, I am ready to move this item. However, I'm going to, because there's been some modifications here, to assure I don't make some gross errors, I'm going to depend on staff to tell me exactly what the wording. We have a resolution for the tentative subdivision tract map. We have an ordinance. I'm not sure if we need to approve Exhibit A, the resolution approved the negative deck. So could you help me out with this?
We would suggest the first motion be a motion to pass a motion to adopt mitigated negative declarations with the findings and 7 mitigation measures as set forth in the staff report and attached to Exhibit A as amended, with an additional finding that any changes that have been added do not raise any new environmental issues requiring revision or recirculation of mitigated negative declaration.
I will so move on that issue.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion to second. Any further discussion? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Second would be to adopt an ordinance to approve 2005-190 from multiple family residential plan development, R3PD, and R3MHPD, mobile home, it's residential, multiple family residential, mobile home combining zone, to single-family residential plan development for 33.8 acres, and for multiple residential plan development R3PD to recreation environmental protection zone plan development. No further division of the parcel REC-EPPD for 0.7 acres based upon the findings as set forth in the staff report.
Also move that.
Second.
Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Passes on a 4-1. Next.
Mr. Chairman, adopt a resolution to approve 2005-190 tentative subdivision tract map, including the requested road modification based upon the findings of conditions as set forth in the staff report and as amended by the board, including the addition of 3 new conditions, 2-10, 11, and 12 as stated. and the other corrections that have been provided for you.
I will move that issue.
Second.
Any discussion?
You know what? Sorry, I do have one.
Go ahead,
Well,
Marita.
it's when you hand everything out the last minute, page 2, the comments in blue, Bob, the last sentence. The streets for this section, up at the top.
Hang on one second, I'm not with you yet.
This is on the one.
The resolution.
Right.
This will be item.
Page 2. Okay, last sentence, well, at least it's blue on our copy.
Correct.
The streets for this section of the project have been designed to accommodate future anticipated parking demands while maintaining open space. Does that mean that they will not tap into the open space for future parking demands?
That was, again, a reflection of the 56 parking spaces that were designed to be provided without going to a wider street section that would have ultimately reduced overall.
Okay, but it does not impact the open space that the project has?
That's what it says.
Okay.
That is reflecting what is currently proposed.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Call for the question.
Okay, there's a motion, a second. Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing no nays, that's 5-0 approved. I believe that concludes the matters before us. Is there anything further?
Not on this agenda item.
All right, thank you. Now I think we should take a look at our time situation, and I would ask for a recommendation from the CAO as to how we should proceed. We have the very important Parks and Rec issue coming before us, and people here to speak to that. Shall we try to work through?
Well, maybe work backwards. Your food's been sitting getting moldy for 45 minutes, so you might want to take.
So what else is new?
I've heard varying opinions on 13 as to whether or not it's going to be quick or not. But understand, as you enter into it, if you do that, you will possibly be committing to a period of time before you go take a break for lunch.
Let's take a lunch break.
Let me just throw in here. I already see people here for the 130 item on the possible condemnations. We have people coming from Sacramento on both number 21 and number 22. And what the heck, they work for us. We could always push them back, but just to let you know, people will be coming expecting those times.
Well, we also, I've been informed, have at least one speaker on item 14, so that we will be opening that before moving it to the 5th. Therefore,
let's take a break.
My suggestion is go gobble your food and come back.
Well, let me ask the people who are here for item 13, can you wait for, how long will it take us to scarf lunch?
15 and 10 is 25. Be back at 1:15.
Let me ask the people who are here. We have several, at least 2 commissioners from Park and Rec. I assume you're here for that. Can you wait for 25 minutes? All right, thank you.
We'll think of you as we're eating lunch.
We will adjourn for a 25-minute lunch break. We will return to the agenda at that time. And we will be on time. We will start at 1:15.